What do you got?
I think I can prove to a judge that both of these men had the mens rea.
What the hell is a mens rea?
It's a legal term the lawyers use. It just means the intention to commit a crime.
Okay, come on, let's go.
Mens rea?
Put the cuffs on him.
How could we have gotten mens rea? We take blood? Can you do it without taking blood? We both use condoms. How is this possible? I want to see a doctor. Can I have an independent blood test?
Money!
I feel sick.
What are you doing?
Mens rea! Oh! Oh! My God! No!
And tonight on the ABC News, OJ Simpson kills one more person. Oh my God, I can't believe it. OJ kills another person? I didn't know Minute Maid orange juice could kill people. I guess what happened here was that someone poisoned the OJ and, killed somebody. Thank you so much, and I'll see you next time on ABC, the horrible news in the whole world. Thank you. Well, I hope you liked how I did my commercials. I'm gonna be a star. I've always been a star. I just have to go to Hollywood, and then I'll just, everybody would be like going, "Oh, I want your autograph. Oh, I want your autograph." But anyways, see you later. Adios. Ciao.
Hey, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everybody. How are you doing? It's me, Legal Vices, and you're watching my little old channel here I call Legal Vices. So I'm wondering, nobody answered my question. I wonder if I hit my cue, because just as the mens rea clip was ending, my screens went black, so I just had to keep mentally timing it in my head. Was there a little image of me between Ari and mens rea, or did I catch it clean? I'm curious. All right. Well, I did not make. Ms. K. Griff said I did not make my cue. Dang. Oh well, whatever. I tried. We did the best we could with no screens. If it was I was only there for a brief second. Oh, okay, good. Ms. K. Griff says we saw a brief flash of your face. It shouldn't have been more because I was counting. I thought I was doing a pretty good job counting. But hi, how are you doing? I hope everybody is having a great day. Today is our little old small stream that we like to call OJ Simpson. We're wrapping it up. After today, we should have about 3 weeks left is all. About 3 weeks after today is what I'm estimating. And then we'll be on to a new trial, a brand new trial. We're gonna have to see about Chandler. She should be here. The last message I got from her was, I'm excited to finally do OJ again, and then we'll have to play it by ear. We'll have to see how it goes. All right, everybody. If she shows, she shows. If not, I'll let you know as soon as I hear from her. So, okay, people, as you know, this is just us watching the closing arguments of OJ Simpson. We watched Johnny Cochran deliver a hellfire and damnation preacher pimp daddy Cochran closing argument, and then he turned it over at the end of last week to Barry Sheck, who was going in and hitting it hard on the science side of things. And so we're going to pick up with Barry Sheck today. We've got a full 2 hours to go through, so I'm going to pause it as little as possible. We'll just have to keep going through and seeing how close we get, because I do want to wrap this up in 3 weeks, 4 at most, even if I have to do a 24-hour stream to finish this thing up. We are not going more than 4 weeks, and I'm hoping to finish it up 3 weeks from today. And then we're moving on, as I said, to a new trial, which we'll announce as soon as we finish the OJ trial. Okay, people, and as always, you know the drill. You know what we got going on here. We've got our little old like and subscribe poll as we're wrapping it up. Like, subscribe, and vote. Just hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, do all that stuff. We don't need to keep mentioning that. And then take our little old poll here. Who gave the best closing argument? Marsha. Chris Darden, Barry Sheck, or Johnny Pimp Daddy Preacher Cochran. You may perceive a slight bias from me in that poll, but there you go. Totally not a Russian bot, says Barry Sheck, the science crack, nothing like the Nye hack. Hey. All right, that's really it. Tomorrow, we are going to be doing the Zachariah Anderson Sadie police investigation. Well, it's not even an investigation. The police interview with Sadie from the Zachariah Anderson trial. I'm going to be giving my thoughts on that. Flux says, Jeff, I like the hat today. Lol. Yeah, what do you mean, lol? Why did you put lol on the end of it? I got this wild hair that keeps like poking at my nose and it's tickling me. What do you put the lol on the end for? This sort of makes it sound insincere. This is my favorite hat. I just haven't worn it in a while. Okay. No, this is not a trial of Billy Jack hat. This is a replica of Clint Eastwood's hat in Pale Rider, which is actually a replica of hats that a group of Mormons called the Danites wore in the 1860s. The Danites were sort of the enforcer. They were like the enforcers of the early Mormon church with the legends. If you want to get some cool info on some Danites, just either Google Danites or start with Orrin Porter Rockwell. Orrin Porter Rockwell, son of thunder. He was a wild, wild guy. But anyway, the Danites wore hats like this. So the Danites were the enforcement arm of the early Mormon church. And that's sort of what Clint Eastwood's character in Pale Rider was based on. You know, he was a preacher. He wore the Danite hat. So there you go. Anyway, look at that. No, is the next trial the trial of Billy Jack? Well, you set me off. That's a great movie, though, by the way. Because the reason I expounded upon that, JKD Buck, is because I was actually considering getting a trial of Billy Jack replica hat, because Billy Jack's hat was pretty badass. It's just really expensive. Yeah, no, the Mormon enforcers back with the Danites in Porter Rockwell. It was more like, do you believe or not? No, bang. That's kind of the Danites were really cool. Check them out. Okay, with that, we are going to jump straight into the closing arguments. We're going to pick it up wherever we left off, mid-sentence. So let's go. Well, Island says you wish you looked better in hats. See, my problem is that when I keep my head shaved, it gets shiny. Well, the new lights don't shine as much as like the big overhead lights did. So I probably don't have to wear a hat anymore to keep the glare off. But hey, it's a shtick at this point. It's my thing because I wear hats all the time when I go outside. Anywho, dang it! I'm starting to. So this is what being inside Megan Fox's head is like. Is it? Everything is just so random. Okay. Let's share the screen. All right, I'm bigging it, and as always, you normally need to turn the volume down a bit. So usually you drop the volume by half. If Sheck says Danite, does he win? Well, Sheck being a Jew who I believe is also a professor at Yeshiva Law School, probably isn't going to be talking about Danites. Billy Jack hat and jacket next month. Ooh. See, I would get the Clint Eastwood Pale Rider jacket before I like the sort of like dark brown maroon sort of long coat. That's what I would get before I got a Billy Jack. All right, stop it. Let's go. I miss Chandler too, Flux. I'm hoping she'll show up. I'm hoping she'll show up. I miss Chandler too. But until she shows up, let's find out why Barry Sheck is looking so annoyed. I bet Chris Darden said something. I just can't remember. So with that out of the way, oh, wait. I forgot to bring that up. That was actually a super chat. That was the first super chat of the day. Thank you so much, Marv White. Billy Jack hat and jacket next month. Oh, I would love that. I was anyway. I'm not gonna go. Just go. Thank you so much for your support. Let's go.
Nothing there. Now, Mr. Fung
Right, I remember he was underwater.
is looking for blood. These socks are the only clothing they take. It's logical as a criminalist, as he admitted on cross-examination, that he would be looking at the ankle area, the one they would look to first, because that would be the most likely exposed. He's not.
And hey, guys, I just want to say there's only 72 of you
He's
here
running
today.
around
Pretty
trying
much
to do
everyone else
testing
is
of
watching
anything that
the
looks like
Crumbly
blood.
trial. But
Or
I want to
testing
thank
the
you
spot.
72 people here for being the coolest people on the earth, because you could be
Then,
anywhere in the entire internet, but you chose to
on
be
June
here.
22nd,
So thank you so much.
Dr. Bateman
Love
and
you all.
Dr.
You guys
Wolf
are
were
great.
permitted to go to the crime lab. And Michelle Kessler shows them the socks. They see nothing. Now we get to June 29th. This is very interesting. On June 29th, the defense wanted access to samples, split them. And the criminalists, Matheson, Kessler, the head of the laboratory, and Yamauchi, are going through all the evidence in about a 5 or 6 hour period.
Those are all the criminalists
Right
in the
there,
office.
they're going through all the evidence to make an assessment of what kind of testing could be performed, of what kind of biological material or blood would be on any of these pieces of evidence, to see PCR testing, RFLP testing, how they could be divided. They also, Mr. Yamauchi said, they were literally measuring the size of the swatches and making assessments and making examinations. What piece of evidence at that point is more important to these people than the socks found in Mr. Simpson's bedroom? Wouldn't you look at that? And they told us that they took white paper and they put the socks on the white paper, and if there's blood, 1.5 inches on that ankle, you know, you saw it every time that we put something down. Little specks would come off. Even when Miss Clark put those gloves on the very first day, we actually had it on white paper, used, you know, the plastic gloves, and little pieces of trace fell off. And we actually pulled those together, put them in a separate exhibit, because these kinds of things fall off. If there were that stain on the sock, that
Okay, so he's still
stain
hammering
sock,
on the handling of the evidence.
they would have seen it. Gary Sims told you he was disturbed by it, that a trained criminalist should have seen it. You use light that's sufficient to look at what you're doing. They're now telling you we didn't have light, we didn't look at what we were doing. Please. Where I come from, that don't pass the laugh test. Now, what is the summary?
And I wish I was
On the
drunk with the
socks,
2
on the
euros. Thank you
report
so
they
much,
do,
brother. I'm cool. I always knew it,
on June
really. We all knew
29th,
it, too. Thank you so much for the support.
Breast
Appreciate it.
socks, blood search, none observed. None observed. Tells you all you need to know. Or none obvious, I'm sorry. Can't even read that. It's either none observed or none obvious. They have two different phrases, one on the handwritten report, one on the typewritten report. Okay. Then suddenly on August 4th, Mr. Yamauchi can't remember. It was some kind of general inventory. Mr. Matheson might have asked him. He can't remember what the direction was. It wasn't specific to the sock. Somebody said, go look at this stuff. And then for the first time, they find the stain on the ankle.
Ankle stain. Wasn't that the name of the priest in Vikings?
We have evidence
Ankle stain?
of the wet transfer
Athelstan. Never mind, sorry.
going through surface 1, surface 2, through the little holes in the sock to surface 3. It's pretty simple. If there's a leg in those socks, you can't have the transfer. Professor McDonald and Dr. Lee came in, and they showed you the pictures of the little red balls.
Phrasing.
And I don't think it's even being seriously
phrasing.
contested that this is evidence of a wet transfer now. They're not contesting it, really. Can't get it when the leg's in the sock. Their testimony stands unrefuted. There was no bloodstain expert that came in here and said, That's not a wet transfer, Dr. Henry Lee, Professor McDonald. Dr. DeForest didn't show up here. Why? Now, during the course of cross-examination of Dr. Lee and Professor McDonald, the prosecution sent up some hypothetical explanations for this that I'll review with you. And each one of them was rejected by Dr. Lee, Professor McDonald, but Dr. Lee in particular, as I recall, I think they gave him all of them, as highly improbable. Lots of things are possible, but he said these explanations were highly improbable. Number one, the idea that at the time of the killings, there could have been a touch with the finger from a victim of Mr. Nicole Brown Simpson on the leg.
What is he doing? Oh, he's showing around the leg. Okay. Is it going full on Mr. Rogers and changing his shoes?
When Mr. Simpson somehow got into that Bronco, came back to Rockingham, avoided Allen Park, ran down the side, left no blood stains, hit the air conditioner, hit the stucco fence, leaving no trace, somehow came in, all with the bloody clothes, went up the stairs, left no trace of blood, left no trace of soil, left no trace of berries, got into the house, took off the socks, left them there, and then it's still wet. So if it's still wet when he takes off the socks, you get the transfer to surface 3. Well, there's a big problem with that. Then you should have seen something on the carpet if that's what happened. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't fit.
It doesn't make sense. That's a trigger word today.
Is on August 4th, when Mr. Yamauchi did the pheno test, taking the swab and brushing the stain to see if it were blood, that somehow created wetness that transferred into the third surface. Or, well, Dr. Lee and Dr. McDonald said that doesn't make sense when you look at the stains, because if that brushing had occurred, you would see a diffusion. And you don't see that kind of diffusion, and that's not the way you would do the test anyhow. Just touch it. Couldn't cause that kind of transfer through to surface 3. Highly improbable, said the leading forensic scientists in America. Sweat. Next explanation is going to be sweat. Well, there was a stain from the crime scene, but sweating in the sock, and then the sock is taken off, and then somehow by process of sweat, it transfers to surface 3.
All right, enough talk about
Dr. Lee and
sweaty
Dr.
little red
McDonald
balls.
said ridiculous, highly improbable. You'd see that same diffusion as with the pheno test, and we don't see it. The next explanation. When Mr. Simpson is taking off the socks, he coincidentally has a finger that touches surface 3 opposite the ankle stain. So it's not Nicole Brown Simpson's blood that is on surface 3. It's Mr. Simpson's own blood that he accidentally touched exactly opposite. That's a ridiculous coincidence. That doesn't pass the lab test. That's the other explanation they floated. Then another explanation they tried. They showed Dr. Lee the new picture of the sock. Remember how they were folded up? They said, well, maybe blood of Mr. Simpson's, when you fold the sock over, landed on surface 3 coincidentally opposite the stain when they were bundled up, and that's what created it. Again, rejected as a ridiculous, highly probable coincidence. Now, none of these things make sense. Ms. Clark also said, you know, there's a tiny spatter of Mr. Simpson's, some blood at the top of the socks, Mr. Simpson. She says, well, there's spatter there. Well, you know, Professor McDonald said there's no spatter. Gary Sims doesn't pretend to be a bloodstain expert. Professor McDonald, Dr. Lee, leading experts in this area. They didn't bring in anybody. It's ridiculous to say there's spatter there. And if it's spatter of OJ Simpson's blood, how does that happen? What, did he bleed so much that created a puddle and spatter on the top of the socks? Nonsense. The point is, every explanation that they're desperately trying to come up with is a highly improbable inference. The most likely and probable inference is the one that is not for the timid or the faint of heart. Somebody played with this evidence, and there's no doubt about it. And you know why there's no doubt about it? Because they got so upset in the opening statement about the socks, about the back gate, so upset that they sent it to the FBI. And Mr. Harmon wrote them a letter saying, please refute the defense theory that somebody tampered with this evidence. Please refute it. Those were the words. Not exactly an objective way of sending it out. Please test this for EDTA. Please refute what the defense has to say. And Agent Martz never testified in the prosecution's case. And you know why that is? And that's really all you need to know. Because he couldn't refute it. Because it's an inference consistent with innocence that they can't refute. There's EDTA. How does that happen? There's EDTA there. So if we could have slide 4.
Damn it! I knew I would do that. Boomer! All right, let me get all informative again. The AEDT, that is a chemical that's put into blood samples by police organizations to keep the blood liquid for an extended period of time. So what they're saying is that first of all, the FBI wouldn't testify to refute the defense's assertion that it had been tampered with, and the blood sample on the sock and the blood sample that was found on the gate 2 weeks after the murders occurred, both had traces of chemical preservatives that are used by police officers to keep the blood liquid and fresh. That, to me, is an incredibly damning piece of evidence. So, yeah, think about that. The two blood stains that have Simpson's blood on it have chemical preservatives in them, the AEDT.
The sock. No blood on June 13th when it's collected. No blood on June 22nd when Dr. Lee, Dr. Baden, and Dr. Wolf see it. They looked for blood on June 29th on a lab paper with reasonable light. 3 people with 25 years of experience, and they don't see it. Most important piece of evidence, examining it for purposes of court. The wet transfer to surface 3.
Speaking of wet transfers to surface 3, it's Chandler Remington!
What was that transition?
I don't know.
Hi, Jeff. I missed you. Hi, everybody. I'm sorry I look like really terrible. I'm so sick. I'm so happy to be here. What did I miss?
Barry Sheck. We're just talking about the AED chemical preservative that was found on the gate and the sock blood samples.
Awesome. I love it.
You got here just in time.
I'm sorry. No, I'll mute myself when I cough.
Yeah, that would be less painful.
I'm so sorry. Did I blow out your eardrums?
Almost, but we're still good.
Okay. Well, I'm here. I made it. I missed OJ, and I'm happy to see you. Let's do it.
We're glad you're here. Thank you for being here. So yeah, what they were saying is when they had the socks, there was no blood found on the socks on June 13th. Right. They looked at them again on June 22nd. There was no blood found on the socks. They searched again. 3 people in great light searched the socks on June 13th. They were actively looking for blood, and then later a wet transfer from the outside to the inside and then to the inside of the opposite side of the sock, that's surface 3, was found miraculously, but weirdly, 2 weeks after, about the same time as the gate blood was found, 2 weeks after, it has this EDTA chemical preservative in it. I think this is just such a huge piece of evidence in favor of the defense.
Massive.
And you just missed Sheck testifying that they sent the blood sample, the socks and the back gate blood sample was so important and so shocking that they sent it off to the FBI lab, the FBI crime lab, along with an email saying, please refute the defense assertion that this blood sample was tampered with.
Oh my God. Wow.
And
you can't make this
up. The FBI did not testify for the plaintiff, leading you to conclude that they could not refute that assertion. So yeah, now we're just getting to the EDTA right now. Shall we go, Chandler?
Yeah, let's do it.
I'm just happy to see you here.
I'm happy to see you too. Oh, we're both wearing the same color too.
Oh, we are, like almost like we planned it.
We matched, like we're twins.
Awesome.
It's very cute.
Yeah, my Miskatonic University hoodie.
I'm wearing my free Zach Anderson shirt.
Ah. Awesome. All right, let's go. Let's hear about more planting of evidence.
Let's do
Unrefuted. And EDTA. Now let's think about it. Is this coincidence? Kill that, please.
He's pointing at Darden.
Is this coincidence? All these things with the sock? Or is it corroboration? I say it's corroboration that something is wrong.
Where's your cow
Something
person
is
at?
terribly wrong with the most important pieces of evidence in this case. It is a cancer that is infecting the heart of this case.
Ooh.
You cannot render a verdict beyond a reasonable doubt based on evidence like this.
No, you cannot.
So if we apply 2.01, an essential fact, the socks, Ms. Clark said, an essential fact. Whose interpretation is the most reasonable?
Mm-hmm.
And even if you give some of those cockamamie explanations some credence,
cockamamie is a word we need to use.
and you
more
say,
often.
well, maybe ours is certainly reasonable enough for you must adopt it. And if you must adopt it, really, where does that leave us? Because, there's another instruction that I submit has some relevance here. Can we have the slide now?
I shall return momentarily.
Now, you've been instructed that a witness who is willfully false in one material part of his or her testimony is to be distrusted in others. You may reject the whole testimony of a witness who has willfully testified falsely as to a material point, unless from all the evidence you believe the probability of truth favors his or her testimony in other particulars. Thank you. Now, yes, that applies to witnesses, but I would argue to you that by analogy, it applies to the messengers who are bringing you this forensic evidence as well. Because let's just think about the socks. The LAPD officers and lab people who are responsible for the collection of this, for the chain of custody, for preserving the integrity of this evidence are the same people that are bringing you everything else. Remember what Dr. Lee said about the socks? He said it's like eating a plate of spaghetti. Looking through the bowl of spaghetti, I think he said, you see a cockroach. Do you then take every strand of that bowl of spaghetti to look for more cockroaches, or you just throw it away and eat no more? In your deliberations, somebody may say, all right, I have a reasonable doubt about this essential piece of evidence, the socks. I have a reasonable doubt. It's reasonable that they manufactured this piece of evidence.
Yes, it is.
But let's put that aside and look at everything else. Well, just wait a second. Just think about what that means. If they manufactured evidence on the sock, how can you trust anything else?
Yep.
You can't. You just can't.
In this country,
It's the
in
fruit
this
of the
democracy,
poison tree.
can they come in? There's no doubt Furman's a liar and a genocidal racist. There's no doubt about that. But there's really no doubt either that they played with this sock, is there?
Well, lots of teenagers
And
play
if
with
that
socks.
can happen, that's a reasonable doubt to this case. Period. End of sentence. End of case. It really is true.
I love Barry so much. He's my man.
Me too.
Not in this country. It's a test of citizenship, not in this country. Now let's go to the back gates.
1 second.
Do we have the next slide? Because you know there's more. There's more of this cancer.
There's always more cancer. He says as he smokes his cigar.
We don't have the rest of that? Put it all up. 117, put it all up, Howard. 117 was the stain taken from the back gates.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, there was something very strange about it, wasn't there? The blood drops at Bundy were degraded and had extremely low DNA concentrations. 117 had enough for an RFLP test. It was 27 times as much as 47, the first blood drop, 45 times as much as 48, 270 times as much as 49, 51 times as much as 50, 11 times as much as 52. This slide, like most of them I'm going to show you, is in evidence. And you know who brought us that testimony? Gary Sims from the Department of Justice.
So again, what he's saying here is that the spots that were found, the little tiny spot that was found on the back gate, the spot of blood that was found on the back gate 2 weeks after the murders, had far more DNA had a far higher DNA concentration than the evidence that was collected and preserved at the time of the murder. 270 times as much DNA concentration as 49. Because somehow all of the stuff that was in the police custody had deteriorated quite a bit, but the stuff that was found on the back gate 2 weeks after the murder was still very, very not degraded. Been out in the hot June weather in Los Angeles, but it hadn't degraded at all. Weird.
If you have the next slide, that's 117, the one on the gate. Do them all. This is 115 and 116, the one on the lower parts of the gate. 15 times as much as 47, 22 times as much as 48, 135 times as much as 49, 25 times as much as 50, 6 times as much as 52. This supposedly has been out there from June 12th to July 3rd. And
3 weeks, sorry.
There's no question. Sunlight degrades DNA. Moisture and bacteria degrade DNA. Why are these concentrations so much higher?
Because they were planted.
There's DNA concentrations, but there's also a separate test, as you've learned, when you look at those yield gels for degradation. These samples are not degraded. No. How can that be? Nothing. Now, there's something interesting here, too. Prosecution is now saying, well, it's on a different surface than the Bundy blood drops.
Oh, yeah.
Bundy blood drops are on cement. This is on a metal gate. Painted metal gates. So something magical about this that will prevent it from degrading at all in over 3 weeks. Remember, the blood drop number 50 is just a few feet.
See, and this is what money
bottom
gets
portion
you.
of the gate. That's
Money
very, very
gets
close
you
to the surface.
Lawyers like this that can call BS on the
but you know,
the criminologist evidence collection.
And I asked
a public defender probably isn't going to be able to go to these lengths.
blood from the handrail. That was one of the last questions they asked him. It's very curious to me that they've never typed that. They're still testing. Remember, the blood on the handrail as you're leading up Bundy, same kind of surface, totally degraded. Remember the samples from the front gate? There was blood on the front gate. Gary Sims's testimony, no question about that, severely degraded, just like the other samples from Bundy. So those are the same kinds of surfaces. So this explanation, don't pass the lab test. Well, what's the other explanation that Ms. Clark offered you? Now, this is a whopper. She said, well, it's the plastic bags. I mean, that's rich. They spent weeks trying to deny that putting samples in plastic bags doesn't degrade the DNA. Well, it does. I mean, you know that from the moisture. So now they're saying on July 3rd, when Fung made this collection, he put these swatches in a plastic bag, but he didn't let them cook as long in a truck as he did on June 12th. It's our own incompetence. That's the explanation. That accounts for these differences. Well, you know, that doesn't work either for a number of reasons. Number one, they were going, as you recall, on a tour of the crime scene. And Fung, apparently right away, all of a sudden, they found this stuff on the back gate. And there's no testimony, zero, as to how long it took Dennis Fung to bring those back to the evidence processing room, or how long he had them in a plastic bag, or what other things they had him doing. There's no testimony that he immediately went back to the lab. He didn't continue with them in the tour or anything like that. And you know why it's significant that they can't come in here and argue that when they don't present evidence? Because they could have.
Say it doesn't make
sense. Because we know that there are records of when you go back into that evidence processing room and get in the door, they could have demonstrated, if they really want to put this argument before you, they could have demonstrated how long it took. Or they could have brought him back here to testify about it. But frankly, if they brought him back here to testify about that explanation so late in the game, you wouldn't have believed them, would you? So they can't use this plastic bag theory, and they can't use that it's a different surface. They can't. It doesn't make sense scientifically. It doesn't fit. So what?
Chewbacca defense doesn't make sense.
You know, what's going on here? Now, there's another thing. They're going to say, well...
That's our Pee Wee Herman word for the day.
Officer Ritchie,
it doesn't make sense.
Phillips, I
We're doing
believe,
the word of the day now.
Herman, Rossi, that night, when they were entering the premises, the back gate, they had their flashlights. And they were looking up and down, and they think they saw some blood on the back gate. So they all testify to it, so you know it's Well, first of all, we know, you've been there, that this gate was rusting. There were all kinds of darkness and imperfections. There were berries all over there. There's all kinds
There's a berry
of
right here.
discolorations. And what did they really see with their flashlights? It's not clear what they saw with their flashlights. But you know what's very, very interesting?
The accent is it's making it hard.
Ryan said to Fung,
Wait, what?
go look. There's blood on the back gate. You should go look. Or we've heard reports. There's 115, 116, all those numbers, right? Those are the photo numbers. You recall how they did the collection? That they put down a photo number, not the evidence item number. So they started on the walkway with 112. And they put down 112, and that was sample 47, and they collected that. Then they went and they put down number 113, and that was sample 48, and they collected that. Then they went down and they put down 114, and that was sample 49, and they collected that. Then they put down 115, and that was sample 50, and now we're right by the back gate, and they collected that. Now, this is what shows you there was no blood on the back gate. Because at that point, what do? They go to the front gate.
Island, trust me, wearing a hat and wearing pants are not necessarily
where the bloodstain patterns are. That's one
required.
Island, I'm still in pajamas.
And then they go back all the way to the end of the driveway and they get the last blood drop.
Pajamas.
Number 52, 117. Why did they go all the way back?
I think I'm wearing a hat.
I'll tell you why. Because
It's a
Detective
formal
Lang had
look.
told Mr. Fung, as he testified, that there was blood on the back gates. And they looked,
There's rain on the
he heard
scarecrow
reports
and
of it,
blood on the plow.
and they didn't see any blood on the back
I
gate.
don't know what you're talking about. It's a
Great song by John
The only
Cougar
blood they
Mellencamp.
saw on a gate was on
I
the
don't know
front
that
gate.
one.
So they went back and collected 116. And you know what else shows you that? We have the picture. Where is it, Mr. Fung? They took no pictures of any blood on the back gate once.
So see, there's no blood. See, I love that he realized how cool that was back when he's like, "Where is it, Mr. Fung?"
I
That
love the
he-
mocking tone. Where is it, Mr. Fung? Oh, he's so
I-
mocking.
And I love that he knew that was a hit, so he brought it up again during his closing.
Mhm.
So this is the no. Oh, here we. Yeah, sorry. The MST3K crew is trying to point to where it is, but it's not there yet.
They're like, look, it's the blood spatter.
Where's the blood? There is no blood.
17. There's some discoloration there that may be consistent with 115 if it's blood at all, but there is no 116. So there's no pictures either. Thank you. And what else? What else? What else? There's EDTA on the stains from the back gates.
Yep.
Oh, his blood is just special like that. He just happens to
So
have
can we-
anticoagulants in
Blood
it.
on this?
That's what made him run so fast when he was playing football.
And anemic, I guess.
Yeah. Oh
Let's
my
look
God.
at the back gate. No documentation or photos on June 13th. Discovered on July 3rd. High DNA concentration. No degradation. EDTA.
There too. Blood
Coincidence
is on the dance floor.
or corroboration that
Not a
something is
band.
wrong.
See, how could anyone think this evidence was not planted? How could anyone think this? Just by looking at this. It's not there. They find it 3 weeks later. It's totally packed with DNA when every other sample is degraded. It's not in any of the pictures, but it shows up in pictures taken 3 weeks later. It's got chemical preservatives in it. How can anyone in their right mind actually try to say and convince somebody that the police did not plant the blood evidence on the fence, on the gate, and the sock?
I really don't know. It's stunning. I mean, it's very, very obvious. You'd have to love the LAPD and really trust them, you know, in order to look past and have that kind of cognitive dissonance. I just don't think it's possible. I don't think anybody loves the LAPD that much.
And see, this is where the cops always get it wrong. They have enough evidence to convict somebody. But then they need to be just extra sure. They need to dot the I's and cross the T's. So, well, if there's a little bit more evidence here, then we'll get him for sure. And they get caught.
It's
The police
beautiful
are
thing to
not
witness.
your friends
Anymore. Were they ever?
Well, they were back in the day with the beat cop who walked the same beat every day, who knew your parents, knew you, watched you grow up, knew who was supposed to be in the neighborhood, knew who wasn't supposed to be in the neighborhood. Back when you had Officer Friendly and you were told to go to a policeman if you ever needed anything. Now it's if you need anything, whatever you do, don't go to a policeman.
I mean, I was born because of the LA riots. My mom looked around at the world and she was just like, well, it can't get any more screwed up than this. I want to have a kid. So, you know, just considering everything that happened with Rodney King, I was not raised in an era where Officer Friendly was, you know, manifest. I mean, Officer Furman was, you know, I mean, I was 2 when this trial happened, so it was just like that was the norm. That's how people thought of cops. I have always been taught to distrust cops for the most part.
Well, us olds, we remember when cops were good.
I'm so sorry that you were propagandized. So it's so unfortunate.
All right.
But you learned the truth eventually.
No, it's when they pulled the cops off the street and put them in cars and just made them drive around.
Mm-hmm.
You don't know who's there. You don't. I mean, hell, anyway. Let's keep going. We're never going to finish this.
Something is terribly wrong. There is a cancer at the heart of this case. This is a reasonable doubt. You put this together with the sock, how many cockroaches do you have to find in the bowl of spaghetti?
What?
This isn't made up.
Let's talk about the cockroaches.
This isn't invented. These are facts. How could all of this be? How can, this is a reasonable interpretation of the evidence based on solid fact. You cannot, on your oath, reject this and say, it never happened. You can't. It's a reasonable doubt. Now let's discuss EDTA, because that's obviously an important issue. They asked for the tests to be done after the opening statement, refuted, and they didn't put them on because it doesn't refute. Reasonable interpretation of the evidence that there's EDTA there, consistent with having come from a purple top tube on the face of it. They didn't put them on. We had to call them. But you know, there's a very, very interesting point that you might have missed in Dr. Reeder's testimony when we compare Dr. Reeder's and Agent Mart's. And that is, January, there was a gentleman named Henkhaus, works with the LAPD Science Division. And they were interested, after the opening statement, in seeing whether or not tests could be performed to detect EDTA. Do you recall who they called? At page 38414 of the transcript.
Oh, yeah. 3841.
Dr. Reeder's question. Incidentally, at one point, were you consulted by the Los Angeles Police Department during the course of this case about methods to detect EDTA? Yes. He was shown this letter from Mr. Henkhaus. Do you remember who that was? Mr. Henkhaus. And did you provide him with materials to assist them in developing a method to detect EDTA? Yes, of course. That was a letter with a number of citations on it. Before the testing was done, before they knew he was even going to appear as a defense witness, they reached out to Dr. Frederick Reeders. Why? Because Dr. Frederick Reeders, a PhD, a distinguished teacher, he runs a reference lab outside of Philadelphia, reference lab. People go to this laboratory when you want to develop toxicology techniques which are specialized and sophisticated, because he is experienced, he is knowledgeable, he is learned. They asked him for work about EDTA. You know why else? As Dr. Reeders testified,
Simpson's joke.
He has expertise in EDTA. And it's used to treat people for lead poisoning. He's been working with EDTA for, I think, something on the order of 30 years. He's the expert you would call.
All right, I have to explain the joke. They had like a little Indian exchange student there who was, living with Mr. with the Simpsons, little Indian exchange. At one point, he's like, "Oh, Mr. Simpson, you are so learned." He's like, "It's learned."
Oh, that.
All to interpret the data. So they asked him for references. And now they want to tell you that he's out of his mind. That he is not reasonable in his interpretation of this data and he shouldn't be trusted.
Mm-hmm.
Very interesting, isn't it? Now, when you evaluate the testimony of Agent Martz and Dr. Reeders, there really isn't that much disagreement. And remember the circumstantial evidence charge about whether there's two plausible, reasonable interpretations. You have to take the one that goes with innocence. There are three questions. Is there EDTA there? Dr. Reeders says yes.
Mm-hmm.
Agent Martz says could be consistent with EDTA based on the MSMS readings. If it isn't EDTA, says Martz, I don't know what else it could be. Next question. If it's EDTA, how much is there? Now, both of them agree that it is in parts per million, not parts per billion.
That means a lot.
And both agree, when you examine the testimony,
It's a big difference.
that if it is in parts per million, it cannot come from the EDTA we ingest in food that then is secreted into the blood. You don't have parts per million that way, because if you did...
Every time he says the word come, he pauses, and it freaks me out a little bit.
You'd have serious health problems. You wouldn't clot. You'd bleed to death, as Dr. Reeders was pointing out. The next question, and this is where they parted company, is the amount of EDTA here sufficient to have come from a purple top tube? Agent Mark
That's the
says,
evidence collection tube.
Dr. Reeders says, unless you were treating somebody for lead poisoning, injecting EDTA into them, that is the only reasonable explanation for parts per million in these samples of EDTA. Agent Mart says, no, I can't really say, because I would expect there to be more EDTA in a sample left for 3 weeks on the back gate, or on a sock, that I'm seeing 6 months later. But he never did a single experiment to find out how much you would expect to get from stains that are months old and have subjected to environmental insults. And you saw that there were quantitation problems when they tested it. It would go up and down.
Robot
so when
dance.
you look at it, look at the credentials. Martz versus Reeders. Reeders has far more experience with EDTA. They wanted to hire him.
You're not incorrect, Island. You're not incorrect.
Dr. Reeders works with the FBI. They go to him and consult, as you heard, on cases. He was working on a case for them, with them at the time he came here to testify. He runs a reference lab that specialized in these issues. Even though he does not have the $750,000 machine yet, the MSMS, that Martz is using, he understands it, seen it before, interpreted data from it. He's getting one soon. So it's not a question of the machine, it's a question of the expertise to understand the data. Agent Martz, he has a bachelor's degree. He had some trouble with pi. I don't want to belittle that, but he didn't even, there's some disturbing parts of his testimony, let's face it.
Pi?
He didn't even consider the validation studies that had been performed by
Scientists
others
can't do math.
at the FBI laboratory.
It's a problem.
They're going to make a big deal about these, he didn't look for that 132 daughter ion. I promise.
Murder pi.
Daughter ions to some people, but he didn't perform the test to find that.
No, Mrs. K.
All
Griff.
the digital data
Mrs.
he
K.
threw
Griff,
away.
5 minutes in the penalty
He comes
box
up
for
with this thing
instigating.
where he
We're
says
not
he
going to fall
tests
for
his own
that.
blood and he finds some level of EDTA in it, but he threw away the documents about what he did. He put it in a test tube for 2 weeks that has silicon in it, has a red stopper in it that could be a source of EDTA. He doesn't go and test anybody else's blood. I mean, this would certainly be a phenomenon if we found parts per million in all these kinds of blood, where his whole method is screwed up. Why didn't he test more? They're going to come back and say, well, Dr. Reeder should have done more of a test on these leftover samples. Excuse me. That's what they should have done. Well, it's their burden. It's their burden, after all. They say it's key evidence. She said it's their defense. Well, then why not get some real studies or do more studies or save the data or present something to this jury that's credible to disprove it? Ms. Clark gets up here and says, we have disproven that this could be EDA from a purple top tube. Dr. Reeders has no basis whatsoever for saying this. It can't be a reasonable interpretation of the evidence.
Yeah,
well,
I don't think
saying it doesn't make it so. It's their burden. They have to disprove this beyond a reasonable doubt. They have not. An essential fact that circumstantial evidence charge says. An essential fact to be proven beyond a reasonable doubt. Ms. Clark got up here and told you this was essential. Have they done that? No, they haven't.
Twisted fires, daughter.
That is many, many reasonable doubts. Now I'd like to talk about missing blood.
Oh, yes, this is
And I
interesting,
think
too.
that we can talk about this in the following way. access, opportunity, and the smoking gun, Nurse Thano Paratus.
Nurse Thanos, what? Oh dear. Anywho, so remember, there was some very suspicious blood found on the back gate and on socks. A suspicious amount that had chemical preservatives that would be found inside of a blood collection vial. Now, we're going to talk about missing blood from a blood collection vial. Suspicious it is.
A little bit.
Suspicious it is. Okay.
Could we have the first picture?
Just slightly.
Now, Detective Van Adder, the man
is he
who
a
carried
poisonous
the blood,
Van Adder?
picked up blood from the coroner's office of Nicole Brown Simpson and Ronald Goldman, blood tubes that contained EDTA. Let's show them all. Remember these? These are pictures of both sides of the tubes. Just pull them out. I think the point is made. One after another. Covered with blood. He got those from the lab. He carried those. Those tubes, the testimony is, have EDTA in them. He carried them on June 15th. Now, we do not have records. There are no records of the amounts that were initially put in those tubes or where he went, how long he went. No real evidence that we can examine about that.
I bet OJ can go for a long time. Hey,
on the other hand, when we turn now to Mr. Simpson, that's enough.
It's the easy one. Sometimes the easy jokes are fun.
Yeah, he testified. He took him from the coroner's office and he brought him to LAPD. But there is no record of how much was initially put in those tubes, so we can't retrace the amounts. Now let's look at the handling of the defendants, Mr. OJ Simpson's reference file.
So they didn't record how much blood they collected from victims.
As Mr. Cochran pointed out, was so upset about how this goes that when he was asked, well, when did you get the blood vial? He said 3:30.
Alicia, how you doing?
That was 2:30. You know that.
We didn't do it intentionally. It just happened. It's serendipitous.
The testimony is,
I didn't even know Chandler was going to be here.
The vial of blood, and he goes off, and he has a cup of coffee.
Well, I did look for the hat intentionally, but
Parker Center.
No.
With a blood vial in an unsealed tube. And as you know, the rules are you're supposed to book it immediately. You can book it in that building, Parker Center. You can walk a mile, go a mile away, takes just a few minutes, and you book them at Hypertext, where the SID lab is. And you buy a DR number, which is the number for the case, and the case starts. That's what the rules say. But that's not what they were doing. Now, can we have the next? That's not it. I want the instructions.
Oh, I resisted the temptation.
Reviewed, I think, with
any more Neufeld, and I would have been triggered.
Which are fascinating.
Oh, yeah, we haven't had one of those in a minute, have we?
It says that the investigating officer, the officer requesting withdrawal of blood shall, when the vial is returned to you, enter your initials, shake the tube vigorously. When the affidavit is completed, sign below as a witnessing officer and seal the vial in the completed sealed evidence labels. In other words, what you're supposed to do after you get the vial from the nurse is you put it in this envelope and the instructions say, using completed sealed evidence labels, you seal the envelope.
Weird, huh?
Now, he's been for a long time. He knows the rules. And the testimony is he's never done this before. Not seal it, not walk around with the blood.
He's never sealed
And
the
now there's
sealable
something
envelope.
else,
Great.
and it's a little hard to see on this photograph.
That's so
we
much
tried to put the
effort,
original here, but at the very, very bottom, there's something really weird that you can inspect. It's covered over by the label. You see the date? I declare this is not apparatus. I declare independently of perjury the foregoing is true. And then it says 5/10/94. May 10th, 94.
Interesting.
Oh, wait a second. This was June 13th.
Interesting.
This envelope is an old envelope in the lab.
Interesting.
It's something that Mr. Paradas had hanging around there for some reason. It says May 10th, 94.
I don't
It's
remember
an
that,
old
but wow.
envelope in the lab. Why is that?
They put OJ Simpson's blood in an old envelope? Sweet baby dumpster Jesus. I don't remember that the first time around.
I had no idea that they did that. I was not aware.
That's like extra levels of retardedness.
What's going on here? They're not following the rules. He's grabbing this envelope. He's carrying around this blood. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't fit. It's a serious problem, isn't it? Now, the next thing that we have is this misnumbering, you recall, of the blood vial. And Mr. Fung, as you remember, was stumbling over it. There's a problem here. The sneakers were brought in by Detective Lang the next morning, and they were put in as 17. The blood vial is numbered as 18, indicating receipt the next morning after the sneakers, and 19 is this hair that Mr. Fung took off the Rockingham glove, all that morning of June 14th. And you recall the testimony that we had in this case, that Mr. Fung remembers he had such, problems. He said, well, and I walked out of Rockingham, I had the tube either in my Ponzi box, that metal box, or I had it in my hand in the envelope, or I had it in a brown paper bag and I put it into the truck. And then we showed him videotape, and all of a sudden it changed, and we had videotape of people inside and Van Anna bringing in the envelope. And now the state of the evidence is that Andrea Mazzola was given a black trash bag and that she didn't know, nobody told her that the envelope had been put in it, and maybe some of those other evidence cards. And you saw the video where they walk into the truck and they throw that trash bag inside the truck and they go back to the lab. And now the testimony is
you forgot to mention that Mazzola fell asleep
trash bag
conveniently with a bag
after they, put the swatches in the test tubes and they leave. Now, and they don't even refrigerate the vial. Now, this is a very odd story to say the least.
Mm-hmm.
And I think what's really peculiar about it, when you get down to it.
Wow, burning sensation. You are old. Remember Wang computers.
Andrea Mazzola said something very interesting. She said that when she saw the next morning, June 14th, the blood vial in the black trash bag,
that's a flashback.
She realized for the first time that she had been the one that carried the blood vial out of the Rockingham residence. So she's saying that she knew that on June 14th. You with me?
Yep.
Now, we had all this. We spent 3 days on this, if you recall. Mr. Fung couldn't remember how the blood vial was carried out. These prosecutors knew that there was misnumbering, that there was a problem with this blood vial and its transfer. They knew it was a problem. Now, if Miss Mazzola had known since June 14th that she had carried this out in a plastic bag,
I hear somebody knocking. Lord, is the devil. Should I
how
let him
come
in?
Nobody was told this? Why didn't somebody know this? Why didn't they interview these witnesses before they got on the stand for 8-10 days apiece? And this was obviously a crucial problem.
Delicious.
Because there's something wrong here. And of course, when she ultimately testified, poor Miss Mazzola had to go over and sit on the couch and close her eyes for 20 minutes because
there we go. Here's the sleepy part.
She was tired and didn't see what went on in the foyer. Now look,
I'm just going to leave this
I submit
bag
to you,
full
I
of
don't think that's
evidence
real
with
credible evidence.
OJ's blood in it
I
here
think
in the
there's something
foyer
really
while
wrong here, but
I just close my eyes and rest them for a minute.
you don't even need it,
Just resting her
really,
eyes.
if you
Just
think
for a
about it.
little.
Because in terms of access and opportunity,
Not looking at the bag, just close my
all
eyes.
that really matters is what nobody can deny. And that is Detective Van Adder is walking around with a May 10th envelope that he should have sealed and he should have booked for 3 hours at least, unaccounted for.
Great
What
song.
is going on?
Live and Die in
There's
LA. What a
something
great
wrong.
song.
It's not coincidence. There's something wrong, terribly wrong. Now, the last part, really, of the missing blood issue is Thano Paratus.
Thanos.
The issue arose
Vanished the
about
blood.
how much blood was in the blood vial. Now, if you recall from the testimony, the first thing that happened is that Mr. Yamauchi got the blood and he stuck in a pipetter that takes 1 mil and he created the Fitzco card. So that's 1 mil. The next thing that happens, that's on June 14th. On June 21st, toxicology gets it. And toxicology does things in an appropriate way. They measured how much blood was in the tube. They take a tube, as Mr. Matheson described it, you fill it with water, you look at the other tube, and you make a measurement. And they measured it to be 5.5. Now, if it's 5.5, and we started with 8 cc's, and Yamauchi took 1, there's 1.5 missing. No way out of that. No way out of that.
1.5 milliliters missing.
Yeah, that's kind of.
Where could it have gone, Chandler? Where could it have gone?
We got some vampires in the criminology lab. You know, some blood drinkers. Other than that, I have no idea.
Ah, well, I would say perhaps a back gate and a sock. That would make more sense than vampires, but can't rule out vampires because it is LA.
True.
Now, Mr. Matheson came in, and you saw these incredible.
Mrs. K. Griff, what is wrong with you tonight?
Where he went and he started taking.
This
look
morning
at all
for you.
the other times people went into the tubes, and he's saying, well, you know, if you
There's
pipette
kind
it
of a
out and you
story.
pipette it out, you may lose something over time. But let's face it, the Matheson explanations can't get around the 1.5 missing right away. There's 1.5 missing right away, and toxicology proves it, and they knew it. So the only other way to explain the missing blood is Thano Paratus must have been mistaken. That's the only way. And what I'll leave you with this morning are 2 clips from Thano Paratus.
Yeah.
Technology, Willie.
Dang, you got to have that queued up. Damn it, you're breaking my stride. You're gonna slow me down. Oh no, you've got to keep on moving.
Approximately 8 cc's.
You say approximately, you did not measure the amount?
Well, it could have been 7.9 or it could have been 8.1. And I just looked at the syringe and looked at about 8 cc's. I went through the needle from his arm.
And did you go through the same demonstration that you just showed for the camera today when I was at the dispensary? Now, there was another statement that I wanted to ask you about that also took place at the preliminary hearing. Let me just hold of that. And that was.
Bela Lugosi's Dead, great song. Bela Lugosi, the 1935.
I just looked at the syringe and it
Okay,
looked at about
we're not in the
8
swim. We're not in the swimming pool anymore.
Which I looked at it, I should say, it looked like it was enough, which it was enough. The 8 cc's, I was wrong in that 8 cc's altogether.
Can you show us what you did do in terms of looking at the syringe after the blood, or when the blood is being drawn? Mr. Simpson.
Here.
Eh.
I pulled it out. I saw that. What it was, I squirted blood into me.
Got to keep on moving.
I just looked at the syringe.
Okay,
I didn't turn it over.
there is a part.
Come back from lunch, we'll discuss the meaning of this. Thank you.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to take our break for the lunch recess. Please remember all my admonitions to you. Don't discuss this case amongst yourselves. Don't form any opinions about the case. Don't conduct any deliberations till the matter has been submitted to you. Don't allow anybody to communicate.
He's picked up some more. Hourglasses since last we saw him. He's got this big old one right up here, and he's got this other big old one over here. For those of you that don't know, somehow somebody found out he likes hourglasses. So people from all over the world were sending him hourglasses. And Mr. Captain Showboat Judge Ito was putting the collected hourglasses on his desk. Weird, but whatever.
Okay, with you with regard to the case, we'll stand in recess until 1:30. All right, thank you, Council.
And that is the halfway mark here. So we'll do a little bit of grift-thoning here. Chandler Remington, good to see you again. It's been a minute.
It has. I've been really sick I relapsed, which was not fun. I've been in the middle of a bunch of crazy life stuff, but I'm here and I'm happy to be here. I missed you. I missed chat. I missed OJ for sure. It was lovely seeing his very handsome face. And no, I'm lying. I miss Barry Sheck.
And Remy_legal is where you can find Chandler Remington's channel. I know you're still ailing and you're dealing with things. Anything coming up in the near future or anything planned for the not too distant future?
I would love to say that I'm doing my Wicked Women stream. I have numerous streams planned. I wanted to do one tomorrow. I'm not going to overpromise, but if I don't do it tomorrow, I will be doing a Wicked Women stream on Monday.
So it'll be Wicked Women Monday instead of Wednesday or Friday.
Yes.
Be Wicked Women.
Wicked Women all the time, every day. Why not?
Oh,
they're all over the place. There are many of them. There are some new wrinkles in the Courtney Clenny case, and I think I might be discussing that on Monday.
Been a couple, yeah.
Yeah, stay tuned. I think Monday is going to be it's going to be the most likely day that I'm going to do that stream, and I'm hopefully going to be able to get a couple Wicked Women streams in next week. I've just been adjusting to a new move, so. That'll be, look forward to that.
Woman. That's what we need to do. We all need to go over to Remy_legal. Don't leave here. Just open up another window and go over to Remy_legal and make sure you're subscribed to her. And also on Twitter, Remy_legal. I will not call it by that other name.
What? The letter?
X.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah, sometimes I refer to it that way for brevity, but
That's what they want. That's how you become assimilated. That's what they want.
That's what Elon wants, that's for sure.
Yeah. And as for me, tomorrow we're going to be doing the Sadie Zachariah Anderson's ex-girlfriend's interview with the police that led to the arrest of Zachariah Anderson. We'll be breaking that down and commenting on it. That is so long, we'll probably have to break it up into two separate streams, one on Friday and one on Tuesday. So that's what's coming up. We're still shooting for a Maritime Monday this week. It's been a minute since we've done a Maritime Monday because we've been engaged in other things. And let's see what do we got here. We've got 129 of you, which actually I'm surprised we have that many people here because everybody else in the universe is watching the Crumbly trial, which is just an absolute shit show in and of itself. So now there's 122 of you. Don't leave. We're gonna go right back here in about 30 seconds. But the now 122 of you that are here, you could be anywhere else in the entire universe, but you've chosen to be here on my channel, watching me and Chandler and OJ. I greatly appreciate you being here when there's other things that everyone else is paying attention to. But you can
Yes, thank you very much. Ooh, we love you all.
And we all love you too, Chandler. It's not the same without you here for our trial Thursday.
I know. I'm so sad that I missed it. I flew in really late and I was just exhausted. I'm so sad that I missed it. I heard it was great.
Well, and we've got our like and subscribe poll. So there's 125 people here. Hey, we got 3 more people here. We're going to be we're going to be going back to the OJ Simpson closing arguments here in just a quick second. But while we're paused, the 104 of you, if there's anybody amongst you that has not hit that like button, please do that. And
absolutely. What are you doing? You're not doing your jobs. You need to do your jobs, everybody.
And if any of you haven't subscribed, I have no idea why you're watching this without subscribing to me. So subscribe too if you haven't done that. That'd be awesome. And double check to make sure you're still subscribed, because as always, we got about 1,000 new subscribers over the past couple of weeks. And whenever you get a lot of subscribers really quick, YouTube puts you into a time of testing. We don't think you really deserve all of these. We don't think they're real. So they start unsubscribing people from channel. It happens. It's real. Trust me. And it's happened to many people here in chat. It's happened to myself.
Oh, it happened to me.
Yeah.
I got unsubscribed. I even lost a membership to the channel. I don't know how that happened. It was very weird.
Yoink. But yeah, if you have subscribed to the channel, just double check really quickly and make sure you are still subscribed. And then take our like and subscribe poll. Who gave the best closing argument? 3% of you say Chris Darden. 14% of you say Marsha, and 18% of you say Barry Sheck, and a full 66%, 2/3 of you say Johnny Pimp Daddy Preacher Cochran. And again, my personal bias may show through there in the way it was the question was worded. So, all right, that's it. Anything else to add, Chandler, before we pop back into the afternoon closing arguments?
OJ was innocent. No, I'm just kidding. Let's watch. I mean, he was legally innocent, so just.
All right, let's go.
And Mr. Sheck, you may continue with your argument, sir.
Thank you very much, Your Honor. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen of the jury. When we left, I showed you 2 clips from Thano Paratus.
I just hear Thanos every time.
In the first clip, he was under oath. He said when he drew Mr. Simpson's blood, he looked at the syringe. And that's how he knew it was between 7.9 and 8.1. No doubt about it. Something he does all the time, routine, something people in this field would do and know. He looked at the syringe. Then, because they couldn't live with it, because 1.5 is missing, and they could have called Thano Paratus in a direct case and put him under oath, Mr. Goldberg goes out and does this statement, this strange, bizarre statement in Mr. Paratus's home, which they tell you was unscripted, or that is to say, I mean, let's not say he gave him a script, but I mean, common sense tells you that they spoke to this man before they went and did this videotape, and you could tell at parts he literally said, I don't remember, because he was forgetting certain parts of what he, I guess, what it was planned to say. But let's.
Well, before we go any further, we don't want Arian the vegetarian to hurt her fingers anymore. At 12:16 a.m. my time, 4 minutes ago, she said, Jeff, since I failed at consistently watching you covering this case, I have to ask if you guys have talked much about it potentially being OJ's son. We haven't. We're just watching the trial and commenting on it. But sufficient reference has been made by many people in chat.
I actually watched a documentary with that theory, and it was fascinating. And I remember at that time being absolutely convinced that was the probable alternate
Could have been.
I don't think so anymore, but it was interesting when I entertained it. So
4 minutes later, Ari and the Vegetarian says, Jeff, since I failed to consistently watching you covering this case, I have to ask if you guys have talked much about it potentially having been OJ's son. I'm watching chat. So now you don't have to repeat the question anymore. You can rest your fingers. Sit back and enjoy.
We love
Here
our
we
chat.
go. That is awesome.
Get down to the substance. I mean, this is not under oath. It is the only testimony you've gotten in this case that is not under oath, which is fairly extraordinary. But you know what's even weirder? It's what he said.
The name Thanos Paratus?
His position is this now. First of all, you can see the syringe, and you can see the calibrations on the syringe. So now he's saying, well, the syringe was turned over, and I didn't see the numbers.
That's
pretty strange.
But
I think that what's even more odd is that it is his position that he now realized that he goofed. How does he know? He says that he took one of these tubes. Now, these, are items in evidence. And he looked at it. And he now remembers, months later, that when he drew Mr. Simpson's blood on June 13th, he can remember the level that the blood was in the vial. And based on his recollection of where the blood is in the vial, he then starts putting water in to another test tube to get it up to that level. And then he says, well, that's 6.5. Well,
lame.
That's not worthy of belief, is it?
Nope.
That you can remember all these months later the exact level, and that's how you come up with 6.5? So not only is it not under oath, and not only is it obviously a convenient recantation and appears to have been prepared, shall we say, to suit the prosecution's purposes.
And it wasn't
when
under oath.
Things just didn't fit. But the story is an absurdity. It is just an absurdity. It is not worthy of belief. It is a reasonable doubt in and of itself. Blood is missing.
Two evidence items are those.
This was the syringe, which is 1382, and 1124, a purple top tube of exactly the kind involved in this matter. Can we have slide number 9? So let's review the bidding. Missing blood. Access opportunity and Mr. Paratus, the smoking gun. Detective Van Adder is walking around with this tube in a May 10th envelope, unsealed, going up for coffee, 3 hours. It is misnumbered. It comes in as 18, not 17, 18, after the sneakers, which were brought in the next morning. There is at least 1.5 mil missing. No question about it. Early in the game because of the toxicology entry. And then we have Mr. Paratus's unsworn recantation. Is this a coincidence?
Nope.
Or is it corroboration that something is wrong, something's terribly wrong at the heart of this case? It is a reasonable doubt because
yes, it is.
Missing blood, I submit to you, the blood is an essential fact in the prosecution's circumstantial case. If you can't trust the man who carried the blood, if you can't trust where this blood went, I mean, EDTA, missing blood. Coincidence? Corroboration. Something is terribly wrong. Now I'd like to move to the blood drops found at Bundy. And there are two aspects of examining this evidence. The first has to go to the integrity of the samples, and the second one goes to the issue of cross-contamination. First, I would like to address the issue of the integrity of the samples. We start with the handling of the swatches. And we know that they are not counted at the scene. They are not counted when they get back to the lab and put into test tubes for drying. They are not counted the next morning when they're taken out of those tubes. There's no count. First time there's a count is when Yamauchi gets it between 9 and 11:20 that morning, June 14th. So we don't know how many swatches we started with originally. And as Dr. Lee told you, as all criminalists told you, as Gary Sims told you, it is the first duty of a forensic scientist to document the evidence and to establish a chain of custody that preserves the integrity of the evidence so that you can bring it into court and good people like you can feel satisfied that you have honest, reliable evidence. That was not done. No booking until June 16th. It's in the lowest security area, that evidence processing room where that metal gate can be lifted, where yes, you have to have a card to get into the door, but other people walk in and out and the entries are not monitored. It is an
OJ's
unlocked
mom,
cabinet,
son, and daughter?
And in this phase, there is no way to trace the individual items.
And I believe that's one of the Trump kids back there behind OJ's mom. That's like the one he doesn't talk about much, I guess. What's his name? Not Don Trump Jr., the other one.
Oh.
Now, we had asked, Your
that
Honor,
guy.
for the bills to be
Ricky.
produced, but they have not been produced.
What?
But
Ricky?
you can get them.
I
You can
was
get them when
guessing.
you go back into the jury room.
Eric Trump.
And there is one absolutely extraordinary fact in this case.
What's that?
On August 23rd, Andrea Mazzola was called to testify at a hearing in this court, put her hand on the Bible, swore to tell the truth. When she came in, she had her notes, the same crime scene log notes that she and Mr. Fung had reviewed in their testimony. She got on the stand and she was asked questions by Mr. Neufeld about how they went about collecting the swatches and the evidence in this case. And she described the process of taking up the swatches, coming back to the lab, putting them in the tubes for drying, taking them out the next morning, putting them into bindles, and then she testified that they initialed the bindles, that she, Andrea Mazzola, took some of them, Mr. Fung took others of them, and she initialed the bindles, those little white bindles that the swatches were in. You all recall that.
Mazzola.
She said that under oath on August 23rd. And, you know, think about whether or not she would have good reason to remember and have a best recollection of what actually occurred when she testified on August 23rd. This case was the first crime scene that Andrea Mazzola had ever primary responsibility for collecting blood evidence. A good reason to remember. Between June 13th and August 23rd, when she testified under oath, Andrea Mazzola had not done another crime scene. So there was nothing to confuse her. Collected blood from a crime scene. When she testified, she knew that this was an important matter. I realized that she did not know who Mr. OJ Simpson was, fair enough, but she certainly knew that this was an important matter and that everybody was concerned about it, and you would expect that she would want to testify in a fashion to the best of her recollection, looking at those notes. She said, no question about it, that she initialed the bindles. You will get the bindles. We laid them out for you. You can look at 52, 50, 49, 48, 47. Her initials are on no bindles. Zero.
She lied.
Something is wrong. Could we have the board?
Joe, are you leaving us? Oh, I hope you had a lovely day. No, I hope you have a lovely day. I misread that.
Dr. Henry Lee is quite a remarkable man. And we tracked this evidence. His offer was not taken up, he and Dr. Batten, to examine this evidence. At the time it was collected, as the testing was going on, he did not really get a chance to examine and handle the evidence until February 16th while you're still sitting here. However, we did try to track it as much as possible, and we were allowed to take pictures at the Cellmark laboratory of the swatches, and we were allowed to take pictures of the bindles and measure them and weigh them because something was wrong. And then we found the wet transfers. This is very disturbing, as Dr. Lee indicates, because the uncontradicted testimony is that these swatches were put in test tubes to dry for 14 hours. And Dr. Lee gave you his best estimate that he thought they would dry within 3. And then Mr. Goldberg came in with.
See, now we got to talk about Henry Lee here for a minute. Henry Lee was my idol as a like my big non-lawyer crime related guy. Henry Lee, an amazing forensic, specifically blood analyst. There's a whole institute named after him. He did an amazing job for the defense in this case. If you've seen the staircase murder case, he was the blood spatter specialist in the staircase murders. And now right now there's the real Gone Girl case, American Nightmare, that's on Netflix right now. He was featured in that. He was the blood spatter person that was called in that case. The forensic scientist guy that was called in that case. But unfortunately, he's been involved in a bit of a scandal. See, that's the problem with heroes is things happen. Last year, the state of Connecticut agreed to a $25.2 million settlement with two men who spent decades in prison for murder, which was based partly on evidence that was presented by forensic scientist Henry Lee that the judge later found was fabricated. So yeah, it was found that some of Henry Lee's evidence was fabricated in these two cases, which ain't good. And it's saddened me. It saddened me when I read about that. Yes, that the rare in history, that is the staircase murder case. Claims his wife got scared by an owl and fell down the stairs. So yeah, we have to add legendary forensic scientist Henry Lee to the sus category, which just crushes me because he was such an idol of mine. Now you have to look at him kind of, give him a little bit of side eye.
That's unfortunate.
Do you have that study?
Yeah.
The Epstein-Barr study, and if we go to Cotton Cloth, indicates
Epstein-Barr didn't kill
that
himself.
It should take about 55 minutes, if you look at it, under condition number 1, that's at room temperature, to dry. So, they should have been dry. I expect they'll come in and they'll say, well, there was a Swatch sandwich. They were all stuck together so they wouldn't dry. Nonsense. Use your common sense. How do you get wet transfers like this? Well, within 3 hours of the time that they were taken out and put in bindles, if somebody had switched swatches, you'd see wet transfer. Now, there was a very interesting point in this trial.
And died, I think.
No, it was down the stairs.
Where
was the stairs? Oh, okay.
Mr. Matheson was asked some questions about knowledge that detectives had with respect to the collection of blood evidence.
I'm wrong.
And he and both Mr. Fung testified to this, that detectives are trained
Play that funky music,
in the collection of blood evidence in exactly the way that they do it at LAPD. Now, remember, the way they do it at LAPD is not the way one should do it for the collection of samples for purposes of DNA evidence. They haven't changed their procedures, as was testified by Ms. Kessler, the head of the lab, in terms of, old conventional serology testing. So they're still putting them in plastic bags and degrading samples. But put that aside for a second.
No, not like the Bachelor case.
Matheson is asked, starting at 25031 of the transcript, about question, when you say evidence collection technique, have you ever taught detectives how to collect a stain using LAPD procedures? Talking about a biological stain, yes. And he goes on to talk about how they want detectives to have the capability to collect blood drops, and they have an on-call system, and sometimes a criminalist, is not available, so they want detectives to swatch blood stains. And he goes on to say, and I quote, "We supply them with blood collection kits, simply a file box with the tools that are necessary to collect the samples." We're talking here plastic bags and swatches and gloves. And question, I know they are taught how to, take a control and use the distilled water and use the tweezers, the whole 9 yards. Answer, yes. They are both shown in the demonstration form. We talked to them about it. It is demonstrated to them, and if time permits, we have practiced with them within class. Question, and are detectives in fact collecting biological evidence in the Los Angeles Police Department and submitting it to your laboratory for analysis? Yes, they do. Detectives have swatches. These detectives would put them in plastic bags just like Fung and
I've got a
Yamauchi.
two-door, not a swatch.
If they were to be stored for some period of time, it would degrade them. Even if they put swatches with EDTA blood on them, they still degrade them. These ridiculous techniques, if they were put into those envelopes and left wet transfers, the integrity of the evidence is in question. Something wrong.
All right. All right. Silent PS has triggered me. Procedures? We don't need no stinking procedures. LAPD, probably.
We are federales. You know, the mountain police.
If you're the police, where are your badges?
Badges? We ain't got no badges. We don't need no badges. I don't have to show you any stinking badges.
Sorry. Got triggered. Had to put that up.
Admittedly, to be fair to the prosecution, there's probably not enough sample left from the Bundy blood drops to take them out for EDTA testing. But they didn't do it. And I think you have to ask yourself a fair question, given the way the blood evidence has been handled in this case. What would those results be?
Badgers? Don't make me break out the badger
from
thing.
This.
I don't want to do it.
You must question. Must have a reasonable doubt about the integrity of this evidence. But when you consider the evidence, we have to take the evidence as it is, and we have to reconstruct as best we can what's going on in the case, as you must, in a fair and unbiased way. And you consider the evidence, the whole issue of contamination arises. And it arises in a funny way, because one can see that if these samples had been contaminated, cross-contaminated in a way that I know you have followed, and I will review with you, and forgive me if I repeat details that I'm sure you followed.
Keep the badgers alive!
That certainly would convince certain people that they were on the right track, and maybe they wouldn't hesitate to tamper.
That's OJ's. What you talking about, Willis? Look.
Tamper with other evidence after that to make the case look better. Could cross-contamination have happened on these facts?
Yes.
Before I go into detail, I'd like to make 2 points. Same point I think I made at the beginning, Dr. Speed made. If there was cross-contamination in the evidence processing room on the morning of June 14th, when Mr. Yamauchi was handling the samples and Mr. Simpson's reference samples at the same time, or on June 13th to June 14th when Fung and Mazzola were handling these swatches, it wouldn't matter how many times you tested them after that, they'd all come back the same. So let's focus on what the issue is.
The issue is Duncan Idaho has been a member for 11 months, has said something is very wrong. Very effective motif the defense stuck with. They've been great to watch. The two of you as well. Hashtag 1984 Dune is a great movie. Correct.
It's what Dr. Speed was calling common mode error. In fact, if we could put this flow chart on the, remember the prosecution showed Dr. Speed a flow chart. It's a little hard to see there, but Mr. Harris, if you could circle the evidence processing room, this was the final flow chart. There are two little houses that represent the evidence processing room. That's drying on June 13th at the bottom and sampling on 6/14. And as you see, in terms of the testing, now do both. Please circle both. This is an item in evidence. The circling won't be in evidence, although I was looking for it. I could have sworn Dr. Speed had circled one, but I couldn't find the exhibit.
Call in
Dr. terms of the workflow, that's where cross-contamination, contamination occurred in the way they handled these swatches on June 13th
I've been
and June
saying
14th.
Burning sensations.
And if it happens there, it doesn't matter who else tests it or how many times, you can't validate it.
Burning sensations or something.
Just if the DNA was cross-contaminated there, it's going to come out the same every time.
Totally.
Now,
a little different.
It's like an STD.
That's point number one. Point number two is the presumption of regularity.
Fiber.
You heard that the primary answer that Gary Sims and Robin Cotton were giving on why they distrusted the explanation of cross-contamination is they said, we must assume that substrate controls were handled in parallel with the other evidence items. Now, there's a lot of problems with making that assumption. Number one, we know that Fung and Mazzola have no training in terms of why the substrate controls should be handled in parallel. In other words, that all the
head criminologist on the murder trial and his assistant have had no training on why it's important to preserve this. Just listen to that shit.
In other words, if they handled all the wet red swatches first and then they did the controls after, they didn't put them in precise order, then it no longer serves as a control against cross-contamination. So they're saying we must assume that they were handled in parallel. And if we make that assumption, then everything, then we think controls worked. Well, there can be no presumption of regularity at the LAPD on how they handle these swatches. And the reason that they are not entitled to that presumption, and well, there's number one, Mr. Simpson is entitled to the presumption of innocence, but number two, we have proven that they're not entitled to it. Dr. Gerdes has proven it.
Hurdy. His first name better be Hurdy. Not Dr. Hurdy Gurdy. Hurdy
Dr.
Gurdy
Gerdes came in and he did an extensive study of the LAPD lab.
Singing songs.
Let me get rid of that circle.
Hurdy Gurdy.
And I won't review all of what he said, but I think it's a fair assessment of this man's testimony.
Why do I always get in a musical singing mood during the OJ trial? I have no idea.
I think it's because you get bored.
No, it's just fascinating. Everything relates to a song somehow in the OJ Simpson trial.
It is a solid, straightforward, careful scientist who spent hundreds of hours reviewing data, doing an inspection. And what he found is that there was a cesspool of contamination in this laboratory. No mistake about it. Cesspool of contamination. The second thing
cesspool of contamination. My father used to describe my bedroom.
How can you just assume they're doing everything right when we can prove they're doing everything wrong? Next slide. The next part of his testimony that has particular relevance.
Chandler has traveled to another room.
Is the whole issue of contamination by control.
I'm in a new
If you recall, when he examined the controls, there were controls that would show that there was contamination going on at the extraction process, that is in the evidence handling, the EPR, the evidence processing room stage, as opposed to later when the amplification occurs, or the so-called negative amplification control. And based on this data, he made the assessment that the contamination problem at LAPD is happening in that evidence processing room stage when they're handling the samples. Thank you. So we have proven that they are not entitled to any assumption of regularity in that evidence processing room.
Grape nut cereal, high in
handle the
fiber,
samples
keeps you
because
regular.
they are getting this contamination all the time. Dr. Gerdes' testimony, I think, also proves something significant in this regard. He proved that they literally don't know what they're doing. It's a shame. They do a validation study where they're processing known samples and things like cases, and they give a report saying there are no incorrect typable results observed. And that's simply not true. And I know we went back and forth about the errors that they made, but you recall the testimony. Some of the errors they made on their own validation study, Mr. Yamauchi and the others, were of the kind that could create false positives that could convict innocent people. And they didn't even note in their own review of it that they made those errors. If they're saying they could be justified, then they should have at the least said there were some incorrect results observed, but these are the reasons. But they didn't even do that
Strawberry's
because they
just about to knock over a $3,000
Mr.
guitar.
Matheson, who
Hang on.
admits no DNA expertise of any significance, is the one reviewing it. He didn't notice anything wrong. Dr. Gerdes, without going into too much, talked about how they don't change their reagents in a regular way like they do at DOJ or Cellmark or any other self-respecting laboratory. They didn't even realize that they had this contamination problem, which is even more frightening. And you did not see a witness come in to rebut Dr. Gerdes.
Saved
One
from
would have
tragedy.
assumed that an independent scientist not associated with a laboratory would have come in here to refute his data. And they'll talk about, well, you didn't call Dr. Mullis, you know, that person would have come in. Dr. Mullis could have been a surrebuttal witness. It didn't happen. I'm kind of surprised, frankly.
Wow, that's an outfit, isn't it?
Now, they're going to...
That's an outfit.
It's a look. It's definitely
It
a
is.
look.
It's definitely a look.
I don't know what the look is going for. I'm kind of digging the chick in front of her though. She's got something going on.
Well, which one? Violet Beauregard or
No.
Black and White? The
Black and white. Black and white. She's sexy. She's got a good look going on. I like that.
She's got that Lauren De Laguna look about her.
Does she? I don't know. I don't know if I've seen Lauren all dressed like that before, but I like the look.
This is sort of like I don't know. It's a look, isn't it?
Toddler core, I think, is what they call it. I saw that recently. It's when you're an adult, but you're dressed like you're 3 or 4, maybe 5.
See, I was
she looks like Moaning Myrtle from Harry Potter. That is so funny. I'm drinking out of a Harry Potter mug right now.
See, I was thinking like 90s or retro Dorothy from Kansas mixed with some Jeffrey Dahmer glasses.
There's definitely, I feel like that's what Taylor Shabismus would look like if she were, around at that time.
It's like Jeffrey Dahmer cosplaying Dorothy.
Kind of, yeah. It's creepy. It's definitely, she's got a horror movie vibe. I'm frightened.
Yeah, she stabbed people.
Definitely.
Probably ate them too.
In self-defense.
No, probably not. Probably the dude didn't have a safe word.
What have they said about Dr. Gerdes?
Everybody. It's that time. I've been triggered.
Beware.
Earphone people, beware.
Protect your ears, people.
It's Donald Sutherland time. Earphone wearers.
I'm muting.
3, 2, 1. Sorry, guys. We've only got like 3 more weeks of Donald Sutherland appearances. I'm sad.
It's really 3 more weeks and then new trial.
I think we're good. I think we got like 3 weeks.
Okay.
All right.
Let's make it.
Maybe probably 4 because I can't shut up. So let's go.
Yeah.
So far, he was paid money. He's not a forensic scientist. He's not qualified to review a DNA laboratory. Well, I think you're going to reject that for good reasons. He's reviewed 23 forensic laboratories, the work of them. He's visited 7 laboratories. He plainly knows the literature in this field. He demonstrated that on cross-examination by a very fine lawyer. Couldn't ask him one question about an article he hadn't read or assessed. He is a microbiologist, which is particularly important training. I'm sure some of you know that from your own work. And that is a person who is a student of how contamination occurs, bacterial contamination occurs, clean methods, sterile methods. He has a PhD in this field from UCLA.
UCLA.
This man, his lab is accredited by a number of organizations in paternity testing, disease diagnosis, organ transplants, bone marrow transplants, many organizations inspected, accredited his laboratory. He understands these procedures. This man deals with life and death every day with DNA testing. The nerve of them to say, you're not a forensic scientist. You can't assess a DNA laboratory and how they handle the samples there. That's audacious. That is not worthy of your consideration as an answer.
The noise of them.
Witness, show data, get a self-respecting scientist to come in here and refute what Dr. Gerdes said. They couldn't do it, they wouldn't do it, they can't do it, and that's why you heard no one. Because he's right. And the lab I mean, it's terrible. You can see they were training each other, Yamauchi and Aaron Riley. They had no PhD brought in to construct this place. That's not right. That's not right. You're citizens here. We're entitled to more than that. You can't run a lab like this. You can't then get up here in closing argument and go, we have a sloppy lab. We're dealing with life and death. Just like these transplants, we're dealing with life and death. It's too late to say now, ignore all this. You can't. Now, they're going to say, he's doing it by medical standards. It's too high. Can't judge a forensic lab by the standards we used for medical DNA. But we went through this, and we know, frankly, that forensics is more challenging. In medical applications, known samples, clean samples, unlimited amounts, they're not degraded. All that occurs in the forensic situation. There's no justification for saying the standard should be lower. And even under a forensic standard, whatever that might be, and frankly, these are the standards, and you know they're not coming close to this book. Even by those standards, Dr. Gerdes offered a conclusion, which I think is not unreasonable in the evidence and stands unrefuted. It should have been shut down. And that's what they're asking you to accept. But it goes further. You know, Ms. Clark said, and I frankly think, I assume she's going to be answering all this in rebuttal. It is not, after all we went through with this DNA evidence, it is not enough to say to you, because you know a lot about this now, to say, oh, they're saying something about flying DNA cause cross-contamination. Flying DNA. That is not the contention. The contention is specific.
Let me tell you about flying DNA.
It is in the evidence processing room. It is in the way these samples were handled.
Phrasing.
It is in the kind of lab they deal with. You have the next slide, please.
Oh, dear me.
No. We know, and I know you know what this is about. When you take the swatches and you put them in plastic bags and you cook them for 7 hours, you degrade the DNA. And as we went through it, Dr. Cotton admitted it, Gary Sims admitted it, everybody admits it. It's fundamental. You can degrade the DNA so that there's none left that is detectable. And if you cross-contaminate it with another sample from a reference tube from high concentration DNA, and remember, we're not talking about very much. The highest amount here is an RFLP test by Cellmark of 25 nanograms. And you know, because we've been through this, that is, you know, such a small amount, less than a drop, a very small speck can create 25 nanograms of high molecular weight DNA. You know that now. I bet you before you came into this jury, you wouldn't have ever thought that you would be literate in this, but you are, you know this now. Okay, next. No, that's not it.
You haven't seen it. How do you know? Why is Jesse Jackson handling the overhead projector?
There's an issue of risk factors. And you have to assess what was handled here in terms of what is an acceptable
fireworks,
or an unacceptable
underpants,
level of risk.
Washing your hands, and a
now
candle.
you remember all these logos.
It's like the weirdest rebus I've ever seen. I don't know what's going on here.
But
I think this was like inside the bunker in Lost. I think these were like the symbols that were on the clock.
Not Penny's boat. What's happening? Wait, I'm so confused. What is on the screen and why are we looking at this?
I have no idea.
I don't know what's okay, let's find out.
You know, you've got like fireworks, a diaper, somebody washing their hands, and a candle.
No, I see like a paper airplane.
Well, I was thinking paper airplane, but it looks more like a diaper.
OJ, these are 90s hieroglyphics apparently. Let's discover more. I'm very curious.
Back when there was only 2 genders.
I miss those days.
Something about a bathroom, some bathroom scales. Okay, there's bathroom scales. We got that. It's like Pictionary.
Yeah, let's press play. I need to know more.
Wow. All right.
Handling multiple swatches in a hurry, handling samples from both crime scenes at the same time.
Yes, there was.
Not changing gloves, not routinely between samples, not changing paper and washing down between samples. when you scrape the swatches out of the tubes, creating aerosols, all these things create risks of cross-contamination. All these things Gary Sims told you, their witness, were wrong. But the single worst thing that was done, the cardinal rule of handling these samples in a DNA lab, is the one in the upper right-hand corner. And that is handling Mr. Simpson's reference tube at the same time that you were processing the swatches and the glove.
I ain't seeing it.
That is the biggest no-no that forensic labs have learned from bitter experience, as we'll discuss in a minute. What happened in the evidence processing room that morning? We know that Mr. Yamauchi says he got the sample
that one.
At about 9 from Mr. Fung. And on cross-examination, he said something that was really remarkable. Do you recall this? All of a sudden, he said, I remember now. I opened up the tube, and the blood spurted up through the creme wipe, and it got on my gloves. Now, he was a little vague about what he did with the gloves. He doesn't remember whether he put them in a biohazard bag right in the evidence processing room or got out, went to the serology lab and got rid of them there. But all of a sudden, we now know there was a spillage of blood there. Now, that is extraordinarily significant because there's plenty of high molecular weight DNA in the smallest drop if you get it on your gloves.
Barry, I think
or if
you're
you don't
losing
change
the jury
gloves.
here.
And frankly, I think
you've
no
lost
reason
me
to believe you did.
completely.
To contaminate these samples that we know are degraded. And it's so easy to do that and not be aware of it. And it's so easy to do that when you're in a hurry. And it's so easy to do that when you're only out of training for 6 months and you're in a tough position. And it's so easy to do that and not really be aware of it.
Kama Sutra.
So easy to make that kind of mistake when you really haven't had the training. So easy to do it when you're handling 21 samples that morning in one day, something that an experienced technician like Gary Sims tells you it takes days to do. So easy to make that mistake and cross-contaminate these samples. So easy. What's most important is that there's an unacceptable level of risk. You cannot accept this presumption that it all went right beyond a reasonable doubt. There's no way. Now, interestingly, when he says, even by his testimony, that he opened up the tube, the blood spurted out, let's give him changing the gloves, although there's no real reason to accept that, frankly. There's still, by his own admission, going to be blood on that table. Blood that you can swipe with your gloves or your hands, and it doesn't make...
Lynn Barry may have cracked the code. The fireworks are blood splatter. The diaper-looking thing is hand wipes. The hands are hand washing, and the candle is a blood vial.
So they just used whatever clip art was available to them at that time.
The 1995 clip art.
Basically, they just went into like Microsoft Word, whatever version of that existed, and that was very high tech. At that juncture.
Windows 95 had just come out, or was just about to come out.
Oh wow!
Take much to do this transfer.
Oh, and we are at exactly 2 hours even. So we're going to go for 30 more minutes. Then we'll rack it down for the night. So we're not going to get through this. It will be 4 weeks. 4 weeks until we can wrap this thing up. Because we still got an hour of this. We'll go for 30 more minutes. Remy_legal for Chandler Remington. She's going to be doing some Wicked Women stuff coming up.
Yes, I am. Look forward to that on Monday.
And other things. So want to go on over to Remy_legal. Make sure you subscribe to her and like everything she's ever done on her channel.
If you feel like it. I mean, that would be very generous.
They feel like it. They feel like it. Make them do it.
Okay. Sure, why not? I'll accept.
The power of Christ compels you.
Go and do it. Okay. Okay.
Not exactly about it.
And me, tomorrow we're going to be watching Sadie, the interview with Sadie, the police interview with Sadie in the Zachariah Anderson case that led to Zachariah Anderson's arrest for murder and stalking. We're going to be breaking that down tomorrow evening, U.S. time. That's what we're going to be doing. Let's go.
He didn't wash down that table. There was no paper there that he changed. There's blood on the table. A fair inference. Now, the next thing that Ms. Clark said, and I don't know if she was listening to the evidence that carefully in this phase of the case, to be frank.
Burn.
Is she said, well, if there were contamination, if there were DNA flying around from Mr. Simpson's sample, then we would have seen proof somewhere else that his blood had contaminated other samples. That's what we would have seen.
Uh-oh.
Well,
even though she's blurry, you can see she's pissed. Jesse Jackson, ladies and gentlemen, working the Elmo.
On June 15th, if you recall, a second set of samples was handled by Mr. Yamauchi. He had the reference tube from Nicole Brown Simpson, the reference tube from Ronald Goldman, and he had item number 12, which were the 3 blood drops picked up at the foyer in Mr. Simpson's residence. Those were the last drops picked up that day. They were the ones that were last put in a plastic bag. And Gary Sims has told us those are the ones that had the highest DNA concentration of any of the samples. Item number 12. They are the one that got an RFLP result from Cellmark. So we know that item number 12 is high concentration DNA. We know that item number 12 was being handled by Mr. Yamauchi on June 15th with the reference samples of Goldman and Nicole, which are also high concentration samples. And Dr. Gertie showed you how.
Int.
At LAPD, and then
Int right there
on the polymarkers at Cellmark.
Oh, that's a perfect position.
And then at DOJ, we got typings that were consistent with cross-contamination from item number 12. And all the controls on those second days, those negative controls are clean. Because as I'll discuss in a second, we've already proven these things happen with negative controls being clean. You get this cross-contamination.
Barry, you're losing us, man. Come on.
This was proof that Mr. Simpson's DNA, by sloppy handling, was cross-contaminated and typed lab after lab. And you heard that on cross-examination, Mr. Clark didn't even confront Dr. Gerties with this board. And you know, he's a fine lawyer, and he knows this subject matter well. He didn't cross him on it because they can't touch it.
Dun, dun, dun.
In order for this to be true, the only thing they can say is, well, there was an extraordinary series of artifacts that accounted for some of it, but it didn't account for this polymarker typing. That can't be an artifact.
The Ark of the Covenant.
It's proven. Thank you.
Other artifacts.
And not refuted. And I should say one more thing in passing I forgot to mention, that when Dr. Gertie showed you his study of contamination at LAPD, when you have these negative controls, you can have contamination and the negative controls come up clean. In fact, in the instances where he saw contamination, 26% of the time, the negative controls were clean. And there's reasons for that, because these negative controls are not always going to pick stuff up. And you saw it right here. There's proof. Now, there's
Can we have Johnny
one other
back?
point to be made about this issue of cross-contamination at the LAPD. In that evidence processing room, we can't be any more specific about it. It's no flying DNA. And that is, you have to have an appreciation of how mistakes can happen with this technology. And we learned something
Flying
about
Burrito
that from
Brothers.
Dr. Robin Cotter.
Flying DNA Brothers.
If you recall, the California Association of Crime Lab Directors gave a proficiency test where they used degraded samples in 1989. And in this test, they gave samples to Cellmark and to other labs, and there were false positives. And Cellmark got 2 false positives, the first and the second time. And you remember what Dr. Cotton told you about what they learned of that? When they did these tests, the second one in particular, the way that they got a false positive through cross-contamination is that they had a degraded sample. And the CACAD study is the only one where they really are sending these labs degraded samples, just like here. There's a degraded sample, because that creates a risk of cross-contamination when you degrade out the initial DNA. And the only thing, do you recall this? The only thing they could isolate is that they were handling the reference sample at the same time they were handling the degraded sample. And what was interesting about her testimony is she testified that they had a witness in the room. In other words, when they were doing these proficiency tests, they were witnessed. Each transfer was witnessed by somebody standing right there. And all they could reconstruct at the end was that they had made a mistake
somewhere.
This discussion started at 27517. Mr. Neufeld was asking, and you determined that it happened at some point during the extraction process. Yes, in dealing with the sperm fractions. But even to this day, Dr. Cotton, would it be fair to say you don't know how the accidental contamination occurred during the extraction process? Yes, that would be fair to say. Question, and it would also be fair to say that this cross-contamination, this accidental cross-contamination happened in spite of the fact that all of the sample transfers were witnessed by a second person to make sure no errors occurred. Answer, you are exactly right. Now, just think of the analogy. This is 1989. Actually, the second one also happened in 1990. This is when Cellmark was starting out. And even when they started out, they had far more qualified personnel than anybody that came in here from the LAPD. And they got a degraded sample, and they handled the reference sample at the same time, and they still can't figure it out, but that's when the cross-contamination occurred. So it happens.
I should have waited.
And it happened.
I should have waited.
To a much better lab than LAPD, and it happened when they were just beginning. Just the way LAPD is just beginning here with far less trained personnel, frankly. So don't come in and tell us, based on this evidence, that it's unreasonable to suggest that there was cross-contamination, because all the evidence really, all the rational inferences point in that direction, that there was an unacceptable risk of it. And we have proof that it was going on with those samples from June 15th. Now, this leads me to a discussion briefly of numbers.
Barry, you can't do anything.
We saw a lot of numbers in this case. And one of those numbers, as the judges instructed you, is what I guess is being called the random match probability.
The DCB Titan, thank you so much for the Canadian $5.
What are the odds
we are
that
now
somebody
officially
coincidentally has the same DNA pattern that they may
Canada.
find in some sample?
So as a juror, at what point can you shoot a
And
lawyer?
some of
in
these
court in
numbers are pretty
self-defense? Because
staggering.
this guy's gotta
These
be
are just
getting close.
frequencies.
No, never.
You know, one
Never
in
is
a
the
billion,
answer
one
to
in a
that question,
trillion.
but I understand
Now, there
the
are,
sentiment.
frankly, some problems with these
Never.
numbers. Dr. Weir, who came in here and testified that he's absolutely 100% right, and these people are just wrong, then offered you numbers which he had to admit were wrong and inflated and biased against the defendant. And Dr. Cotton, using Dr. Weir's methods, has come in here and told you that the database for a 5-probe match at Cellmark for an African-American is based on samples they got from Detroit. And in terms of how many people have been tested on all 5 probes, and you get down to it, it's a group of people from Detroit and just 2 of them. So there are some problems with these numbers, but let's put them aside because they're really, in a sense, irrelevant to the main issues in this case. There's problems with them, and I don't think that you can just accept them at face value, but to find many reasonable doubts, they're really irrelevant. And the reason is that the issues in this case, as I'm sure you've realized, are how did blood get on these samples in the first place? Who put it there? Did they get there through contamination? Was there laboratory error? Was there corruption, contamination of these samples? That's the issue. So the numbers really are irrelevant. They're just telling you frequencies about samples, but it doesn't answer the question, how'd the blood get there? Now, the judge has told you that laboratory error and these random match probabilities are different phenomena. They are. They're different things. And you know that from your own common sense. Let me give you a simple analogy. Let's say that we're trying to figure out the odds of somebody getting killed when they're walking across the street. There's lots of different ways it can happen. You could get struck by lightning. And the odds of that happening are probably like some of these random match probabilities, 1 in a trillion. On the other hand, if you're walking down the street, across the street, and it's a busy thoroughfare, and you walk out in the middle of traffic, the odds are greater you'll get hit and killed. If the cars are moving at 60 miles an hour, 70 miles an hour, the odds increase. If you walk out in the middle of the block, the odds are getting greater. If you're walking against the light, the odds are getting greater. The chances can be almost certain that you're making a mistake. So what you have to look at in assessing laboratory error are risk factors. And we know that the risk factors in the evidence processing room are unacceptably high, as Dr. Gerdes told you, unacceptably high. So if we could review. Are the Bundy blood drops cross-contaminated? We have to look at the history of this lab, a cesspool of contamination, unrefuted. The contamination, as Dr. Gerdes says, is localized in the evidence handling, exactly where it looks like it happened in this case. The risk factors in that evidence processing room are unacceptably high. We have contamination from that reference sample board on June 15th of Mr. Simpson's blood going into 2 reference samples with the controls being clean. And then we have the whole issue of Mr. Yamauchi spilling the blood.
Oops.
It's reasonable doubt. Now I'd like to turn briefly to the hair and fiber evidence. You heard from, Miss Clark can say it's his hair or it's this fiber. But as she had to say in her closing, that is not what the testimony was from the witness, because hair and fiber evidence, as Mr. Diedrich pointed out, and as we all know, and as Dr. Lee pointed out, is what they call weak association evidence. It ain't DNA. It is weak association. We're talking about broad similarities. You can't even say the word match when you're talking about this evidence. It is really evidence by way of exclusion. We have to, they can't come up with a number and say this hair is, the odds of this being someone else's hair is 1 in 20. Can't even say that. It's just a question of looking at as many similar hairs to see if you can get an exclusion from a particular race. So there's no database, there's no number. It's just similarities. It is weak association evidence. Nobody is telling you that this is definitely somebody's hair is some particular fiber. Therefore, what you have to do with this kind of evidence, as Diedrich and Dr. Lee mentioned, is that you have to exclude other frequent visitors, for example, African-American visitors to the Bundy condo area, if you're doing a serious assessment of whose hair, man or woman, older children of Mr. Simpson, younger children of Mr. Simpson, others who are there could be contributors of the hair. Fiber is no different. The same general class characteristics. A big deal is being made about blue-black fiber from some unknown source that's found on 3 objects and maybe more. Now we have Mr. Diedrich talking about the blue-black fiber at 35338, line 12 to 17. Question, do you remember what you told us in your direct examination about the amount of cotton fiber that is manufactured in the United States every year? Answer, 5 billion pounds. Question, okay, do you have any idea whatsoever of the number of fabrics of blue-black nature that looked black to the naked eye and were distributed in the Los Angeles area in the past 5 or 10 years? Answer, I have no idea. You want to say 10%? What's 10% of 5 billion? Look around the courtroom. How many people are wearing blue-black cotton fibers? Maybe some of you right now. So you have to look, when you're assessing this evidence, at background. Who could be contributing these hairs and fibers? And you can't say anything certain at all about the similarities. It's weak association evidence. We know that Mr. Simpson is a frequent visitor to the condo area. You would expect to find his hairs around there. You would expect to find bronco fibers around there, not just from Mr. Simpson, but from Nicole Brown Simpson, from the children, from others who were in and out of that Bronco that's used as a utility vehicle. Just as a simple illustration, Dr. Lee, this is a soil exemplar that the LAPD took. They never made an assessment of the fibers. Here's hair and fiber that you just see in the soil from that closed-in area. It's okay. It's around everywhere. We shed them, it comes out, it's all around an area where people live. Now, one interesting character that could be a source of all these is Cato the dog. After all, Cato the dog is probably, in that closed-in dirt area, one of the most frequent visitors. And Cato the dog is carrying hairs from all the significant members of the family, and he's carrying bronco fibers with him because he's a dog that shed. I had a sheepdog. You all have dogs. You know that that is a phenomenon.
Are you carrying my hairs?
And Cato the dog,
Are you carrying
as
my
we'll see, and it's a significant point, was at the crime scene that night.
ACV Titan
In terms
never
of
is why
assessing
things
hair and
won't get
fiber
better.
evidence, you have to look at the issue of contamination.
Don't do it.
Particularly when you're talking about hair and fiber flying all over the place at a crime scene. I mean, this is where the issue of contaminating a scene is of critical importance. And how did they handle this scene?
We're going to be going for 12
we
more
have
minutes.
The issue of the blanket. I mean, this, as Mr. Fung admitted, was colossal stupidity.
And what he means by colossal stupidity is the bodies are laying outside. They took a blanket from inside the house where everybody literally and their pet dog has been and covered the bodies with this blanket from the house. That was colossal stupidity. So now everyone that's ever touched that blanket and left their DNA and hair and other fibers on it has now cross-contaminated the crime scene. Good job, LA Police Department.
To take a blanket that people, that Mr. Simpson and others with bronco fibers, hairs from all kinds of African Americans on that blanket, and then throw it out over the crime scene, over the bodies, over the evidence items everywhere, is asking for trouble. But perhaps the most significant problem here, and it's the one they haven't come clean on in this case at all, is dragging around the bodies.
Oh, yes.
This was, in terms of handling a crime scene, this was really an incredible thing. Because if you're trying to make associations about hair and fiber evidence from clothing of the two victims and what might have been in the dirt area, where people are shedding these things all, and you drag the bodies all over the place, over the evidence that you're testing, there's no integrity to that. It's ludicrous.
Ludicrous speed. That's literally what they did. And in dragging the bodies through the crime scene, is Chandler cosplaying as Jeff, just asking for a friend? Hey.
Just a little.
Yeah, so they actually, and there was the bloody glove, and they actually moved the glove out of the way so they could drag a body through the crime scene and then put the glove back in sort of kind of where they remember it being before they dragged a body through the crime scene. Good job.
Nobody ever came clean and said who it was that moved those bodies through the envelope and the hat.
The glove.
And we all know that happened, right? I have to admit it happened. When they pulled Mr. Goldman's body through, or Lord knows what was going on, it was all moved and replaced, and nobody's ever come back and told you who put the envelope back in a different position, who put the hat back in a different position, who put the glove back. Nobody's ever come in and told you, and they certainly didn't investigate. We'll talk about that a little bit more. But we put in concrete evidence that this kind of cross-contamination was going on in the hair and fiber evidence. Could we have the next slide?
Shenanigans.
These were slides that were put in evidence by Mr. Blazier, if you recall. And this represented something really interesting. It had to do with blood stains blood evidence that you found on the clothes, the dress of Nicole Brown Simpson on the left, and the shirt and the jeans of Mr. Goldman on the right. And if you recall, there was not only blood evidence, stains on the bodies themselves, but there was also in the area where they were taking controls. You know, you try to find an area where there's no blood stain, you take a control, and those controls came up showing evidence of Nicole's blood on Ron's shirt, vice versa. Can we have the next slide? What is the exhibit number?
Ooh, a pixel fade. That was cool.
I'll get you that. These are in evidence.
Technology.
The summary of the results were, on those clothings, go back, please. Summary of the results, there were 23 stains tested. 16 of those stains showed carryover. And very interestingly, if Mr. Simpson supposedly committed these murders and his hand was cut and he's struggling here, no matches. No evidence of his blood on this clothing. But there is carryover between the clothing. Now, what does that mean? That means, frankly, that the bodies were dragged through the crime scene and blood from Nicole Brown Simpson got on Mr. Goldman and vice versa. And if that happens, that's how the fibers can get carried over too. And Ms. Clark went on, and I think she even put some, little pieces of the puzzle up there. She went on with this rank speculation where she was saying, well, we know that it was one killer. And we know it was one killer because we saw some fibers that came from Nicole's dress and got on Ron's shirt or jeans and then back and forth. And that's how we know that one person was going back and forth between two victims. Nonsense. This proves it. This proves that the hair and fiber and the blood evidence were all coming together because the handling of this crime scene is a disgrace. A disgrace. They're dragging the bodies back and forth. Okay. Now, also, it should be noted that it came out during the testimony of Ms. Brockbank that the two gloves and the two hats, the knit hat and the plaid hat found in Mr. Simpson's Bronco, and the Bronco carpet that was cut out of the car were all placed in the same box. I mean, the way they handle this stuff, and then they want to come in and say there's integrity to the hair and fiber evidence is ridiculous. Briefly on the hat, we had testimony about dandruff. You heard Mr. Simpson's barber say that in the off-season, in the summer, in spring, he gets dandruff. Right after he's arrested, they remove known hair samples. His hair has dandruff. There's no dandruff in the hair in that hat.
Zoom in on the dandruff.
Now, if we look at the hair and fiber evidence as a whole, there are, and this is just weak association evidence, nonetheless, there are
like, are we really talking about this during my murder trial?
And these were put on slides that are in evidence. I'd like to review them briefly with you.
Wow.
Both gloves, no hair consistent with Mr. Simpson on the Bundy glove, no hair consistent with Mr. Simpson on the Rockingham glove. That's the slide we put up. But you know what we should have added to that slide?
No.
Very significant facts that I hope you don't forget. There was an unidentified Caucasian hair on the Rockingham glove. Did they test Mark Furman? Did we get a hair exemplar from him?
Wouldn't that be funny if his hair came back black?
And this is a fascinating point.
Shut up.
Cato the dog. His hair was found on the Rockingham glove. And I'd like you to read this testimony to you because I don't think it was an answer that Ms. Clark particularly liked. And this was in the cross-examination of Mr. Diedrich. Question. And they were talking about Cato's hair and page 34949 of the transcript. Is the finding of such hairs, Cato hairs, on the Rockingham glove accounted for by possible contact between the wearer of that glove, the murderer, and Cato the dog, either during or immediately after the murders? Answer, could have, It could have been a direct transfer for the dog, or as I stated before, an indirect transfer from hairs at the crime scene. Question, that were, say, where? Answer, on the ground maybe. Would have to have been on the ground. Question, have to have been on the ground? Answer, or perhaps from one of the victims who had been on the ground and collected the hairs. Question, and that you have previously described those as being common to the under part of a dog as opposed to the tuft or the coat. Now, he's talking about the hair. This was a
Nipple
soft hair from Cato the dog found on the Rockingham glove. Answer, okay. It may be just a matter of semantics here. When I say the under part, under the fur, under the out of coat, which could have been on the belly, it could have been on the back, but it is just the soft, fine hairs that are closer to the body. Question, if that dog used this shaded place to sleep or lie down on a regular basis when it was in the Bundy residence, might you expect to find some fur hairs left behind in the soil? Answer, I would expect that, yes.
She named the dog
and if
Cato
the
after
Rockingham
Cato
glove were deposited any time on that soil, the Rockingham glove being on the Bundy soil in the closed-in area, were deposited any time on that soil, might that not explain the presence of those hairs? Answer, it could, yes. So very simply, he's saying that this is hair from the soft underbelly of Cato of the dog, the kind that you would expect to be shed if he were lying on the ground there, not the kind that you get if the dog sort of pats you, all right, or it comes up on you as they're going to probably claim, fleeing the crime scene or something. It's a soft hair. It's the kind that you would find on the ground in the closed-in area. What does that mean? That means that Rockingham glove started at Bundy. Somebody took it somewhere else, and you know who that was.
Tell us.
Let's go on to the next slide. The socks. There's no fiber on the socks
That's a sock, apparently.
consistent with either glove, and these are cashmere gloves where cashmere would easily come out and get on your hands, transfer to the socks. No fiber consistent with Mr. Goldman's clothes, and we know there was hand-to-hand combat here. No fiber consistent with Nicole Brown Simpson's clothes. Nothing on those socks. Also, we should add, no soil on those socks, no trace, no berries, nothing. Pretty interesting, those socks. Next one, please. As far as the hair is concerned, no hair from Mr. Goldman, no hair from Nicole Brown Simpson on those socks. Next, please. As far as Bronco fiber is concerned, no Bronco fiber is found on either glove. No Bronco fiber, no fiber consistent with Mr. Goldman's clothes is found. No fiber consistent with Nicole Brown Simpson's clothes is found. Next. As far as hair, no hair consistent with Miss Brown Simpson. No hair consistent with Mr. Goldman on the Bronco. Okay. And I should add, in the Bronco, what they did is not only did they take out that carpet, but they went in, they vacuumed it. They vacuumed it to get all the hair and trace. They vacuumed it.
Oh, God, I hate to think what they would
Mr.
find
Diedrich
if they
himself, when he was
vacuumed
talking
my
about
Jeep
hair transfer,
carpet.
said, well, the way it would get transferred is when you go, you sit down in your car, things would come off.
It'd be like
There's
Costco hot
nothing
dogs
in
and
the
chips and
Bronco.
pizza DNA all over the place.
How can that be?
All right, that's a good place to end for today. How can that be?
How can that be? Good question.
All righty then. Let me bring up my timestamp here so that we can find our place next time. Big in it. That's the 2:15 mark. So we got 30 minutes or so left of this, and then we got 3 more installments after this. So we got about four weeks. Or if we do a little bit extended, we might be able to crush it into 3 weeks. We'll do our best to finish it in 3 weeks because Chandler and I, we've got a hot new case, a hot old case, new for us, but old for the rest of the world case to cover after this. We'll let you know what that is at the end. OJ Simpson.
Oh, it's going to be fantastic. I'm very much looking forward to it.
And this is a case that was handpicked by Chandler Remington.
True.
And it's a 3-week trial, so we'll be covering it gavel to gavel, start to finish. We'll be doing the whole trial. And it's actually a very, very interesting case that I had forgotten about. So stay tuned for that. We should be starting that in 4 or 5 weeks from today. All right, the like and subscribe poll, the 111 of you that are still here. If you haven't taken the poll, now is your chance to do it. You got about 12 seconds left to do that. Now, like, subscribe, and vote. Excuse me while I cough again. Excuse me while I lubricate the throat. No, not the Menendez brothers case. That was actually very long, and Legal Bites is covering that. All right. Our like and subscribe poll today is who gave the best closing argument? 3% said Chris Darden, 14% Marsha, and 17% Barry Sheck, and 65% says Johnny Pimp Daddy Preacher Cochran gave the best closing argument.
Wow.
I concur.
Mm-hmm.
All right, Chandler, any parting words for us?
I'm really happy that I was able to join today. I'm sorry it took me so long to get here, but I'm back and I'm looking forward to next week. I think we're going to have a great time.
Well, I'm glad you made it here too. It's always a pleasure to have our co-host with us. I hope you get feeling better soon. You've been under the weather for quite some time. Me
too. It's not fun, but especially in the middle of a move. But I'm getting there. I'm a little low energy today, but I appreciate your patience and hopefully I'll be restored to 100% energy sometime soon.
Next week, 100% Chandler.
Oh yeah, 110%.
Okay. Just get to 100 and I'll be happy.
I'm happy to see everybody. I'm so happy to see chat. Thank you you guys are all so sweet. Thank you for welcoming me back. I'm really glad to see everybody. I see Bifrons. I see Equality. Thank you guys. You're really nice.
Okay, well, we are going to shut this bad boy down for this week. Check out on Monday. Chandler should have her Wicked Women up on Monday.
Time to be announced.
Yeah. And for me, tomorrow, Friday evening, 9 p.m. Eastern time. 9 p.m. Eastern time. We're going to be doing Sadie's chat with the police. I don't even know if I should call it an interview. Chat with the police that led to Zachariah Anderson's arrest for murder and stalking. We'll be looking at that. We'll be breaking it down with any luck. Sadie will be in chat. Sadie was in Nick Staro's chat when he was reviewing it.
Oh.
So I hope she's in my chat. I have words for her.
You have words for Sadie. Yeah,
I have words.
I've got some words for Sadie too. For Zach.
So that'll be starting at 9 p.m. Eastern U.S. Join me tomorrow for that. Next Monday, I'm hoping to have a Maritime Monday stream. And Tuesday, we're probably going to have to break up the Zachary Anderson thing with Sadie's interview because it was 2.5 hours long. And with my talking, that would be just about 2 full shows. So probably do that Friday and Tuesday. All right. That's it. Mods, thank you so much for being here and doing your moddy best.
Thank you,
and
Mods.
Chat, thank you for being here. You could have been anywhere else in the entire universe. You could have been watching the Crumley trial. You could have been watching literally anything else. You could have been doing anything else. But you chose to be here with me, and I greatly, greatly appreciate that. So, Chandler, give us a goodbye.
Goodbye, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. Make sure that you are subscribed to Legal Vices. Make sure to like this video, and make sure to join Jeff for his next planned. What's your next video?
The next video is Zachariah Anderson. Tomorrow.
Oh, yes.
Sadie's interview.
I'm obviously, okay, I need to go lie down. Thanks for having me.
All right, people. We will see you tomorrow. We're going to send you off out into the wild and let you go wherever you want to go. So whatever you do, just remember. I don't know what it means. I just wanted to do it. We'll see you later. Bye, everybody.